All right, there's the mic. There's that. All right. So I guess we're gonna talk to Mythic Politics guy. That guy. This feels strange. I'm using regular OBS. All right. Let me see actually because I just realized. Hang on. All right. That's cool though. I'm not gonna need that there. This is way too big. Let's do that. It's weird. This is awkward. This is my first time using regular OBS in a long time. So we'll do this here. I'm actually probably gonna have to kill the cam when he comes in here. All right. All right. This is kind of scuffed, but all right. Now let's call Mythic. Let me also look at so I can look at my chat. Whoops. Leave that over there. Love my wallpaper. Thank you. All right, he's calling. All right, I'm gonna turn my camera off for a sec, cause I'm gonna need to do that for the. I'm gonna need it for the call. Okay. Okay. Yo.
Hey, 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 how you
Hang
doing?
on, let me turn you up a little bit. My headphones. Turn my headphones up. All right. Say something.
Am I quiet? Am I quiet? Am I quiet?
Nah, you good. You good.
Okay, I can put up a little extra makeup gain here. Is that a little bit better?
It might be on my end.
It's probably on my end. Everyone says I'm quiet in Discord.
Weird. That sucks.
Yeah, I don't know what to do. I have a Go XLR and I can give it a much more gain, but I end up sounding like Haas above and beyond being an authoritarian commie, above and beyond being a tanky. I don't need to be having the gain on the mic as well. You know what I mean? Then I'm just going full Hoslarp.
I feel it. Let me make sure that your volume is decent. Okay, yeah. So your volume's decent too. Cool. All right, yeah. I just had to turn you up on my headphones.
How are you doing?
I'm chilling, man. I'm off work. I got the, you know, what I'm saying, I got the cotton candy Fago. We're smoking. We're vibing. How you feeling?
Good, yeah. Just got back from watching. Got a little Thor: Love and Thunder in. Thought it was okay.
Was
The
it
wife seemed to enjoy it.
uh was it good?
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, it was good. I fucked with it. For me, it's more like the experience and the pacing was good. The
Okay.
plot was kind of like as expected. A lot of movies are a slog to get through. It's definitely not the worst Thor movie, and they got another one lined up. So I mean,
Okay.
if you're like a Marvel soy face like me, it was enjoyable.
Yeah, I'm clearly a Marvel deep nerd. I got the Night Thrasher poster back there, but like Thor, I was never big on Thor, and I actually was never a big Doctor Strange fan. But the most recent
Mm.
Doctor Strange is probably my new favorite one, just because Sam Raimi's direction is always the man just doesn't miss.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. The I don't know. This is like we're branching off into Marvel shit. I thought
Already.
the Phase 4 of Marvel or whatever. I don't know what the fuck this new thing is, but it's like it has a lot of baggage. So there's a lot of. I felt like the Doctor Strange movie. It suffered from the thing where you had to watch all the What If series. You had to watch
Okay.
WandaVision. You had to watch all of that to understand what was happening in it.
WandaVision's
So
the
I
only one of those. Well, WandaVision and Moon Knight are the only two I've seen so far. I haven't seen any of the other ones.
you didn't see What If?
Not yet.
No, the What If was probably my favorite one out of all those.
Really? I gotta
It,
check it out.
yeah, it, yeah, it was. It set up all the multiverse stuff. It set up there's like zombie Marvel in there.
Sick.
They showed like yeah, it's crazy. I think there's even a zombie Thanos episode, and I forget exactly, but I thought it was pretty cool. And
That speaks to how
the
good it
the
was. The fact that I haven't even seen that shit, and I still, you know what I'm saying? I'm still rocking with it as hard as I am.
Yeah, I think you probably would have gotten more out of it if you had seen it because it seemed to be explicitly they figured out what they wanted to do with that movie, and then they made WandaVision and What If to set it up. So it's sort of like it's
Okay.
all like it feathers in aesthetically to the plot. Like
Okay.
all the little vignettes were seem to be like little mini versions, and they're even like the evil Doctor Strange. That was like there was a whole episode of What If on that, like where he
Really?
came from. Yeah,
Okay.
like there was an origin story for the other Doctor Strange thing.
That's tough.
I didn't expect to nerd out this much on this stream.
Already.
Yeah, already. Yeah, but okay. So for the benefit of all 11 people watching me on YouTube now, what is an endless cemetery? And just tell me a little bit about you for my benefit too.
Sure. So, I'm also a metal nerd, and Endless Cemetery is actually a song title from a band called Cryptopsy from Canada. They're like one of my favorite like death metal bands. But
Right on.
I corrected the spelling of the word cemetery, cause so if you're looking for the song, it's the final track on the record. Once Was Not came out in 2006, I believe. It was the last record that had the original vocalist Lord Worm on vocals. I think the last record that had one of the original guitarists as well. And they spelled it just this is just like meticulous like goofy shit, but they spelled it Cemetary, and like I lost a spelling bee when I was in like 6th grade on that word, spelling it that way. So I like yeah. So
That's funny. Like, yeah, I think that's pretty common. When I was tweeting out earlier, teasing the
everyone
interview
does it,
tonight,
yeah.
Yeah, I spelled it Tary, and it was like underlined. So I like right clicked on. I'm like, that doesn't seem right. So I had to fucking Google it, and it was like Tery.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
But I was like, okay, well,
I always tell people it's all C's and E's and no A's, like your report card in middle school. But and I made my name that from like I've been playing video games online, like on PC, since like 1997. I started playing Unreal Tournament back in like '99, and I always had like, you could just make your name whatever when you play those games on PC. And I didn't start playing Xbox Live until 2006 or 2007, when the 360 dropped, and it felt like this really like gravitous moment because it's like I have to pay money for this now every month to play on this thing, and so I can only make my name once. So I was like, all right, and I just try to think of something cool, something like hard as fuck. You know what I mean? It's like this is gonna
yeah,
be my
yeah.
name. This is gonna be like a tattoo. It's gonna be my name forever. And fucking I was just like, that's the beefiest song on that record, and that's my favorite shit right now. So fuck it, I'll just make my name that. And I actually had to change it on Xbox a couple of times because I was number one in the world on Quake 4, and people would see my name and recognize me and leave the lobby. So I had to change my name twice. But yeah, that's
So you're like a gamer.
yeah, deep gamer, deep fucking. I'm just like a deep nerd, man. Deep metal nerd, deep video game nerd, deep music nerd. Fucking
So
just
you've
nerd
been
vibes.
so you've been on Twitch for a while, I take it, like
Yeah.
off and on,
Um.
or like because I'm sort of new. I honestly
Okay.
came to Twitch following like Hassan. I saw Hassan and Vosh. I'm like, so apparently that's where you go if you want to go live
Right.
and have white opinions. So I was like, okay, so there you go. Apparently that's like it was calling to me like a beacon. But then I get there and I was like, damn, motherfuckers are really playing video games up on here.
Yeah.
So
That's what so has been so bizarre to me is because I've known about Twitch since its inception, probably in like I want to say like 2010. I didn't participate at the time. I had a friend at the time who used to do like Call of Duty like montages and clips and stuff and put them on YouTube of him doing crazy shit like 360 tomahawks and like tomahawking people across the map, all kind of silly stuff like that. And like I knew of the infrastructure at the time, so like I knew what a HD PVR was, all that stuff back in like 2000, probably like 2009, 2010, 2011.
yeah.
And then once
Yeah,
the
I had a Justin TV account back in the day,
really
just like a UStream. I had a UStream or whatever
interesting.
because I used to do like blog talk radio. I did like political radio,
Oh,
but
word.
never with the live video component. But I mean, unless I did, unless so I think I was on UStream a little bit and I was on Justin TV a little bit, but my views were always better on audio only. So that's just where my attention went. You know what I mean? Because it was such a new thing, and I don't think a lot of people had the bandwidth back then to really fuck with it. Whereas now everybody's got like fiber, everyone's got high speed internet.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I didn't get high speed. Yeah, it was a while before we got high speed internet in our house. But yeah, nowadays everyone has easy access to streaming just through like Facebook and because I remember Periscope and all that shit was popular.
Yeah, yeah. No. I kind of missed that wave. I think I was just like on Twitter and Reddit and Instagram and all that.
Yeah, I was doing nerd shit. I was on. I was doing two things. I was in this like message board. I was in a band, and my band had a message board at the time. It's not really important, but it was like this shit called like Metal Realm or something, and this other thing called like the Satanic International Network. This other like thing. This other dude on YouTube, Zach, 30 Hits of Acid guy. I think his name is on here now. He's a wild dude, but
It sounds like it.
yeah, I was on that shit talking about like individualist anarchism, and I was like really big into anarcho-capitalism at the time and shit. It's fucking stupid, but
Yeah, I
yeah,
don't think I ever, even back in the day, I came from more of like a conspiracy theorist place, and
I
even
was into
then, I was
conspiracy theories.
based. Fucking, I like conspiracists because it means they're not afraid to have unpopular opinions about stuff, and not unlike in that thing where like atheists tend to know more about religion. Conspiracy theorists are just so I think they're basically bad historians, but they're making an effort to learn. You know what I mean? And they're attracted to the salient, edgy points of a thing
Yeah,
where
I
they're
was
like, like CIA overreach or malfeasance or corporatism or corporate crony capitalism. They
Right.
hone into all the problem areas, and that's where they hyper focus on it. But they narrativize in probably
Yeah, I was gonna say
unsustainable
the thing
ways.
that the thing that makes it the thing that at least put me off to it, because all that stuff is what attracted it to me as well. But the thing that put me off to
Yeah.
it was how it always somehow circles back to the people that they didn't want to get replaced by in Charlottesville. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah, there's a big Daniel Pipes wrote a book in 1999 where he overlays, and I think it's basically true, although it's probably more complicated. But if you had to narrow it down to two paths, there's an anti-Masonry path and the anti
Like
Jewish path,
Zog,
anti-Semitic
like
path, and
the
then
Zog, yeah, like that bullshit.
yeah, and there's is that Zog is that the white
The
nationalist group?
yeah, well, no, it's like the Zionist one world government where it's like the
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
NWO,
yeah,
the
yeah.
Bilderberg bankers, and the Jews and all that shit. Where it's like
Yeah,
there's different
it,
levels of extraction to it. So
yeah.
the average person is just like, oh, Bilderberg, whatever, whatever. But like you can take it that way if you really want to do that, and that's how people get lured into that shit. In some ways, it's one of the ways that white nationalists like recruit and shit is through that avenue.
Yeah, I think Zog is more of a terminology that you would see in those little niche white supremacist groups,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I remember. I forget. I was reading a book on conspiracy. I wouldn't necessarily. It makes sense after the fact. Like, I wouldn't necessarily think of like white identitarian, white supremacy, white nationalism as like a conspiracy theory. But when like their anthropogenic myth is like literally racial hygiene and the Jews
Right.
like sabotaging them, it fucking makes sense to like totally reconcile it as like a conspiratorial cult
Right.
with a racial identitarian values,
And
and
just
that
like
like
for the average person, it's just doing what white nationalists do with every other area where they recruit from people in like niche communities like that is just explain to them that the alienation that they feel from capitalism is actually the fault of the Jews
yeah,
or immigrants or whatever.
yeah. Okay, so there's that. So how? So you said you were coming from a conspiracist.
Really quick, because
Um, yeah,
what's your favorite like genre of? Because I fuck with contactees a lot. I really fuck with the alien like community.
I tend to go back to, or you mean like favorite like listening to? I like I don't even know. I think that the ones I tend to dwell on is the CIA stuff
Okay,
because
that's yeah, that stuff's interesting.
it's so epistemologically crippled and it could be going on right now. I have no idea what's like sort of skunk and mongoose, especially when the high like the JFK era CIA. Bro, you could like straight look me in the face and tell me all kinds of shit and I wouldn't know if it was real or not. Like in
Yeah,
that era. There's I mean with all like the
I'm
Project Mongoose
I was gonna say I dabbled in that shit just because of COINTELPRO. So, well, that's the
yeah.
FBI, but yeah,
Yeah, same thing. Well, and
yeah,
then Project Chaos or whatever with the CIA, they were basically the same thing: domestic disturbance of
yeah,
subversive groups or whatever the fuck.
for sure.
Basically, things that challenge the white majority, effectively. Any group that or liberalism, anything that they thought would supplant the liberal core
The
ideology,
like,
they were just
yeah, the like neoliberal. Yeah, you got it. Yeah,
yeah. And then it's interesting when you look into that where like I forget who was talking about. I think it was I was listening to TrueAnon. And they had a guest on there that was talking about
my housemate likes TrueAnon. I don't really do podcasts. I'm on a podcast, but I only recently started doing like I didn't started
yeah,
do like watching streams until I started streaming. So it's like kind of those things. One of
same.
those things. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then like I threw myself into it. Then I started watching too many streams. Same thing like 2 years ago when I started trying to plan like a video podcast. I just threw myself into the deep end, just sort of watching it because like I just want to see have some sort of context for what I was attempting to do.
I
And
feel
same
it.
thing with podcasts. But podcasts they're so time consuming.
Yeah.
So you really have to have like a high value thing. True Value. I only really listen to True Value, Chapo, and like Cumtown. And Cumtown just because it's like
Yeah.
entertaining.
So
It's
you
low
listen to
effort.
all the same shit that
The
my
just
podcast co-host. Yeah.
the lefty starting kit or
But
starter
yeah,
kit
the starter
fucking
pack.
podcast. Yeah, yeah. So I think TrueAnon was talking. They had somebody on there that was talking about the FBI and Fred Hampton, and fucking effectively the FBI FOIA release on that and how they talked about they were not even necessarily concerned with black nationalism, like a pan Africanism or black nationalism. What they were concerned with was they were still like infantilizing black people at the
Oh yeah,
time,
for
and
sure.
their concern was that they were a vector through which the communists were affecting the
Yeah,
liberals in America.
right.
So that was the reason. So it was they were even like racist and condescending in the way they disrupted them,
For
which is sort
sure.
of amazing. It's like a exponential.
Yeah, and that's like what a lot of the like the antisocial or anti-communist like anarchists will tell you is they repeat that propaganda, not understanding. Because I did the same thing for the longest, like, and it's especially embarrassing for me because I was like beating the Black Panther drum, and somebody had to show me pictures of them like with Mao and shit, and me just having no fucking explanation for that kind of shit. So,
Yeah, no, how do you mean showing them with Mao?
or like not like with Mal, but like, have you ever seen the pictures of people at the rallies like holding up the little red book, or like the picture of Cornel West like in the office with the big fucking portrait of Mal behind him and shit, and like just it.
Oh, that they were Marxists, or
Yeah, basically, yeah. That
yeah.
well, or like MLMs basically.
Yeah, which is based. There was I watched a very good video from a person I ultimately disagree with his because he was talking about it. Then like he got through 9/10 and at the last, and he's like, which is why it's not based. And I was like, no, a fucking hard disagree. I agreed with the premise. It's Ryan Chapman, and he was talking about how Marxism was the base for every progress social movement in America. I'm like, based, fucking real
Yeah,
and true.
right.
It's literally true. Like the gay liberation, Stonewall, motherfucking. The civil rights movement, every miscegenation of fucking laws,
Right.
and all of that stuff was precipitated by neo. It's sort of like a man with no country. Those movements because it's not liberalism and it's not straight ML shit. It's reformist neo-Marxism from like the Frankfurt Critical School, which itself was sort of anti-communist in itself. So it sort of was unpopular by the communists, and that's why everyone kind of shits on it still today.
Right.
And but everybody enjoys the after effects of those activist movements in the 60s, but no one wants to own it. And now even
Oh
now like
yeah.
there's a bad connotation to
Like
like
the
wokeness
federal
or
or
whatever.
at least state level governments co-opted a lot of that shit. Like the school
Yeah.
I went to had free breakfast. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and yeah, they were fucking. That's why, like, the more, and even I was kind of tripping on this. I was like thinking about how even in movies like by um, damn, what's dude's name with not John Carpenter. Fuck, he didn't do John Singleton. John Singleton.
Okay.
Even like John Singleton movies, like black experience movies.
Like
They're
hood movies.
hood movie. Yeah, okay, effective for lack of a better term. I didn't want to be the one to say it.
I feel it. I feel it.
Yeah, like black experience movies. There's this idea of like there's some perverse failed thing about being like a Black Panther or whatever. There's like an internal narrative, like they got too close to the sun, or they were naive and good faith or whatever, and then the protagonist in those movies always like goes too far and then is punished for it or something like that.
Yeah.
So there's like
It's
even in
really weird
mainstream, and
because
they don't ever talk about the leftist components to it. They just talk about like the radicalist illegalist aspects of it, like they're doing it just because they
right,
hate white people and not about that it's about inequity and social change or whatever.
and they
It's sort
don't
of like
really address like the government's role in that shit too. Like the Baltimore Black
yeah.
Panthers, Eddie Conway started that shit, but there was the people that he started it with were feds. Like there was no Black Panther organization in Baltimore before he started it with them because they were trying to flush out all of the leftists and activists in the area.
Yeah,
And
there's
they
so
ended up doing it. Like he was in prison. He served like 44 years in prison for a murder he didn't commit. The BPD's still trying to clap him and shit. It's pretty wild, but yeah.
someone in chat says I like the conspiracies about the ones that involve being anally probed because he can relate. Good one, chatter. Okay. Someone. It's very interesting that somebody. I think I was listening. I was able to listen to like 5 minutes before I turned it off. That thing where like Rhizome was covering him talking to you on Sonsol or something like that.
Oh
And
yeah.
Rhizome and Sonsol are very libby and they're hard. I can't really engage with like their commentary on a lot of stuff. Or no, maybe it was Chud. I think it was Chud Logic
I talked
reviewing.
to I talked to I actually spoke to Chud Logic. I don't know if he remembers speaking to me, but I spoke to
Mm,
him on his platform directly, but of course he reviews all the stuff that's like
yeah.
Chud Logic's whole thing. He just reacts to other
Mm.
people reacting to things.
Yeah, yeah, which is, I mean, like, look, if you want to get to the core of the drama, at least he's an unabashed drama farmer.
Yeah,
Like, at least that he owns that. He's like, yeah, yeah, I'm a Marxoid drama farmer. Yeah, that's
a
it.
Marxoid.
That's, yeah, I think that's sort of his. I think it's different in England too. I think that they sort of like they
Mm,
are less reflexively against Marxism, but effectively on where the rubber meets the road, they're effectively just doing
I
centrist liberalism.
I wouldn't necessarily say that just because the whole rock against communism and all that skinhead shit and neo-Nazi shit that I was actually just having a conversation with some black British comrades specifically in reference to Stardust and how she platformed some British neo-Nazi or something was like interviewing or some shit like that and
I didn't see
they
that.
called her out on it.
Mm.
They were telling me about it, but before we get to that, because I still haven't done the intro and like how I got into
Oh
all this
yeah,
shit or whatever yet.
yeah,
We
yeah,
just
yeah.
been meandering ADHD, but yeah,
Oh, real quick, I do want to say that I remember watching Chud Logic watching you, and then he sort of like, you had mentioned like, yeah, like going back to COINTELPRO, and like Chud like stopped and like scoffed and laughed at it, and was like, yeah, but that's fucking was gigantic in crushing American movements. You can't talk about like activism in America, especially from left of center perspective, without bringing up COINTELPRO. It was like they literally
yeah.
crushed whole
Also,
left of center.
they
Yeah,
did, but also it's not even just that. It's how they went about it. It's not like
yeah,
and this is what's so funny. Like when people don't understand why we call people feds, is like they think that when COINTELPRO or like the CIA or the FBI or whatever, that type of stuff is happening, that they have like fucking like three like dudes like the Expendables come in like $8 million a bullet and fucking $10 billion contracts for each man to fucking like Osprey fucking helicopter them in the middle of the night to do a black ops mission with silencers and shit.
yeah.
And nah, fucking
COD.
they killed Martin Luther King Jr. with Memphis PD and just some guy, right?
Yeah,
They fucking killed Malcolm X with just some guys and the New Jersey Police Department. They killed
yeah.
Fred Hampton with Chicago PD. Like the and it's also like you were saying, he's British, so he has a fundamental like misunderstanding about how the police operate especially in major cities here in America.
Yeah.
And I mean, who
And
knows?
the reactionary racial core of it, because
Oh, absolutely.
America's unique in the anti-black, in the reflexive anti-black action,
Oh
because
yeah.
of the history of chattel slavery and the otherism
Right.
and everything else like that. So there was this whole unspoken torrent of like severe fucking racism,
Right. Well, that's what the
and
police are.
that are
That's what the
yeah,
origins of the police are. Is to make sure that the settlers are safe inside the colony, and if the savage natives or the slaves are making things uncomfortable for the settlers, and the police come in to smooth things over. That's why they always appear during labor demonstrations as well. So.
and there's various like, I don't want to like there's like various like Tavistock techniques, and you see this, people understand, maybe like they might come, if they come from a vector of like how unions are oppressed now, where like literally if they listen to like what Amazon does to crush union and
Right.
organizing in its own thing, they have literal plants, fake employees show up to meetings. They take, like, if there's 100 people who are interested in meetings, they split them up into groups of tens, and they put all the noisy ones in one group, so they cannot so they cannot mentally fuck with the, or they cannot vocally coerce the other people from their point of view. So
Right.
they isolate the vocal, very pro union people, and the other 90% who are bored and just want to get to work, and then they just I don't know what the fuck you call it when you like sabotage a meeting, but they effectively do that. They
Oh
ask
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
leading questions, they interrupt. They just one guy
Like
raises his hand like,
filibustering
"Hey,"
and shit.
they, effectively, yeah, and they derail the momentum. They make the meetings effectively useless, and it's not like they go in there and crack heads or whatever. They do it by asking banal questions, interrupting, and the way they arrange the meetings to begin with, which is very effective, and it's very hands off. So effectively you could do the same thing, and it seems to be in the history of the leftist movements and the countering to that. All they do is they sort of like do what Cass Sunstein calls cognitive infiltration now with right-wing groups. They show up and they exacerbate. They show up and they try to lead people to a premature and ultimately violent, non-useful conclusion. Like, let's go do this action. Come on, guys, let's go. So,
Like
when
agents
like
provocateur.
yeah, like literally some bullshit like that. Whereas everyone's like, well, we were talking about going and getting signatures to getting this thing on a ballot measure, which will like let's say like give school lunches or something like that, which is like effectively we talked to sociologists. This would be the thing that would help people the most. And like,
Is
but
that there was some? I don't know if I'm remembering this correctly. If this is like some Mandela bullshit, but like, didn't some anarchists get caught up trying to blow up the Statue of Liberty like that? Some bullshit like that. I want to say
with
that.
fucking Malcolm X,
Okay,
the people that got busted for shooting
that's
Malcolm X
right. That was
ultimate
part of because
yeah.
Ray. What was his name? Ray Wood, the police officer that admitted that shit on his deathbed. Yeah, he was talking about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and they were part of it was either like I forget exactly what was that, but they was like yeah, it was like the false flag that was attached. I think that they the people that were ultimately involved with the shooting, I think they were on roped or like became confidential informants, I think based on a failed false flag that they tried to do with roping people into bombing the Statue of Liberty,
Right.
which is a very like underreported thing. That happened. Yeah, that's interesting. I throw that on my trope spreadsheet, but I haven't like really explored that as much. But recently, the FBI, through FOIA, or the person, like I believe, two of the individuals who were incarcerated over the the Malcolm X shooting, were released from released from prison, right? Like a year ago.
Really
Yeah, that just
interesting.
happened. Like I want to say like 6 months ago it happened, and
Okay.
then his daughter died 2 days later, which I thought like
Oh,
it
I
had my
did
whole
hear, but yeah, I covered that.
yeah
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I did
yeah
hear
and
about
like
that. That was
which
wild.
seems a really weird conspiracy. It doesn't look like anything was untoward there. She appeared to be sick for a long time. Just the timing was bad,
That's
and
yeah, that's weird timing. Yeah, for sure.
maybe it was just a thing that they released it so she could see it in her lifetime type deal. Like look, his daughter's about to die. If you could like release him
Yeah,
now so she could see it, that'd be cool or
that makes
something. But
sense.
probably nothing actually works like that. And maybe it's just a coincidence. Or that's it. Maybe that's what the type of shit that was keeping. She was holding her on. They maybe gave her a little
Just
piece, and she just like
serendipity.
let go.
Yeah.
Or yeah, or just fucking coincidence.
Right.
But those are two very. It was enough of a thing where when I saw Malcolm X in the headlines again 2 days later, I thought it was reverberations of the same story, but it was no, it was a whole different ass fucking Malcolm
Hmm.
X story that popped in. But yeah, it's effectively like the feds and the government and it's not and it just shows it's also when you look at those things, yes, there was actions against contrary political voices, but it wasn't concerted. And like you had mentioned, it was usually state police, local police, other parties, and it was not necessarily from the top reaches of the government. It was just sort
They
of
just
a
straight up paid the Klan, the Freedom Riders. They would pay the Klan to follow the Freedom Riders around and beat the shit out of them.
yeah. Yeah, and there was just there was like a reactionary movement. There was whenever you have like black activism or leftist activism, there's always a reactionary core around them that I don't know if they're used by the establishment necessarily, or if that just is the establishment manifesting itself in a like an immuno response against the status quo or something
Right.
like that. I don't know. I can't really call it, but there's wherever you see in American history, that's where you see counter activism, or
For
effectively whatever
sure.
you want to call it. Yeah.
I
Okay,
mean,
so your introduction. So that was the Chud Logic detour on COINTELPRO.
yeah, sorry.
So
Yeah, I would do like Facebook live streams, just like I don't even know what I was doing. I guess you could call it comedy. Like I would just like say or do goofy stuff, just like talk at the camera, whatever. People were into it. It would be sort of political. By the time I got to my politics, the place where I am now, by the time I was doing that, I was kind of close at least to where I am now. Cause like I said, I used to be like on ANCAP time and shit because
mm,
so I have identified as an anarchist since I was like 9 years old, like before I even understood what that even was. Because there was two movies that changed my life: Johnny Mnemonic and Hackers. We got a computer in the
yeah,
house when I was like 8 years old, and I immediately just like fell, just like dove into skitty shit. Like aim progs, carding, fucking war driving, when Wi-Fi dropped, all that shit. I was deep in the game. And just by virtue of how I viewed information, like music and stuff, because I've been a music nerd. I've been playing music since I was like 11 years old. Fucking, I was like, information wants to be free. Like
Yeah, I was about to say,
yeah,
information wants to be free. The cypherpunk movement,
right.
sort of.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that was always my mindset. So I was like, cool, I guess I'm an anarchist. But like, I was literally like a single digit age child. So like going up through school and getting the heavy dose of American propaganda that everyone gets. You know, we're whistling Dixie. World history is just European and American history. Fucking, we beat the Nazis. Slavery kind of sucked, but it's over. Segregation kind of sucked, but it's over. So if anything bad happens to you, it's your fault. Like,
racism's fixed.
right. So I was like a hard capitalist, and like it was just like anti-communism is just straight up a meme, like in American society, like Cotton Hill vibes. Like even if you don't understand why or how it's like funny or pertinent or like edgy, it's just like a thing to just hate communists. So
Cold War. It's like 50
yeah,
years of
Cold War propaganda. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's taken as a given, and like they're used, and it's pervasive. It's in everything in the media.
mhm.
Like every bad guy. Some things I saw something recently that because if you asked me, put a gun to my head, said what's name every bad guy in an '80s movie, I would have said a Russian guy. And I watched a video recently that said like also trans people. I was like, nah.
Yeah.
And then I fucking went back and look. It's always a cross dressing. It's always a cross dresser. What they effectively called then, right?
Mhm.
Someone playing around with gender identity,
Yep.
or a Russian, or both,
There was
or it was
a
like a
lot
Russian dude
of
in a dress or something.
yeah, there was a lot of like evil, like queer coded evil character shit, like Nightmare on Elm
Yeah,
Street 2, like yeah.
yeah. That I mean, that's true, and it's pervasive. It's the propaganda through media that you are unaware that is being beamed into you. It's
Mhm.
you don't notice
The
the
background radiation.
pervasity. Yeah, exactly.
It's
Yeah, the
giving you
background.
the it's giving you the cancer.
Yeah, you become like no, you become deaf to it effectively,
Oh
right?
yeah,
And then
absolutely.
and until you like until you start for by hook or crook or by other way you happen upon something that's like from left of center, and you're like, wait, actually this shit hits. This shit is like it's elaborating some truth that's based around some anxiety I had about something not fitting together about society,
Oh yeah.
and you start testing it out, and it's like, bro, like leftism just hits different.
For me it
It's a
was
better
Occupy.
yeah, same. Yeah, I think
Um
that really Occupy really shifted me to the
yeah,
left. I think
cuz I
a
was
big time.
like I said, I was ANCAP, and I was really, this is going to sound weird as fuck. I was really into Stefan Molyneux. Like I
Wow.
thought that, yeah, the are you familiar with the video he did called "The Story of Your Enslavement"?
No,
Uh
I only know him from a modern. I think I was aware of him from some sort of maybe earlier about like esoterical in the same way I was familiar with like Michael Sarian and other like fringe occultists
okay.
and esotericists and like
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
That shit is
But I think
actually how I got into like Peter Kropotkin, like Emma Gold, and like
yeah.
fucking like all that shit. Like yeah.
So you were watching Stefan Molyneux.
And this was in like probably like 2009, 2010. I was into Molyneux, but I was also really like into, like I was into occult shit, like Satanism and stuff. So I was in the Satanic International Network with that 50 Hits of Acid guy. And from there, that's when I started learning about because I was just researching anarchism, because Stefan Molyneux, that's why I thought the story of your enslavement was ether, because it was the first time I'd ever heard anarchism presented as like a legitimate philosophy and not just like edgy teenager
Yeah.
like untapped territory or whatever. So
Or like a failed project that
right, exactly.
while hopeful, it was ultimately naive, and it failed under the
Yes.
weight of its own
Correct.
it
Yep.
failed against the gravity of its own weight or something.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So that's how I ended up in the alt-right anti-SJW pipeline initially. And Occupy and my experiences playing music are what circled me out of there.
Hmm.
So Occupy happened, and there was some stuff that I was involved in because I had a homie that was doing. I can say this because it was like 11 years ago or whatever, but it was some Silk Road stuff that we were doing in our little
Hey, so,
neighborhood,
yeah.
and so we had that operation going, and we also had a CD torrent site and a movie torrent site going. And then this Occupy shit starts happening, and this specific event is what made me so Occupy the whole of Occupy itself is what made me start questioning how viable capitalism is, because obviously, like, I am the 99% is fucking amazing, just like branding, and just that was amazing. So that
It's
had
very good. It's very good populism with
yes.
a leftist critical filter, right? So
Mm-hmm.
they take the prescriptions of leftism and they filter it through a populist thing for
Right.
mass consumption in America. And I think that's a very good way to do it. That's why
For
Bernie
sure.
Sanders did the
Yep.
same thing,
Yep.
and
That's
it's
why
very
Bernie Sanders
effective.
was so successful. Right.
Yeah.
So that happened, but there was Food Not Bombs. Shout out to Food Not Bombs. If you guys don't know what Food Not Bombs is, definitely check them out. But there was a Food Not Bombs organization in Blaine County in Florida. And shout out to my comrades Frackle and Aston Mac TV as well, because they actually organize and drop off meals and organize protests and stuff down in this area in Florida. But the Food Not Bomb, the Blaine County Sheriff's Department came out and like flipped the tables over, arrested all the people serving food, and essentially these people got arrested for serving food to homeless people in the park.
Yeah.
And the internet never forgets, and that was when the whole anonymous "We Are Legion" shit was popping off, and there was some shit that happened. Some websites were defaced. This, that, and the third happened, and it just kind of opened my eyes to that the government is actually a present oppressive force in society, and
Even as recently as BLM, there was
right, right, right.
like hundreds of hours of like drone where they were literally monitoring domestically people that
Mm-hmm.
assumed to be
Oh
associated with
yeah.
a coordinating
Oh
activism.
yeah. We
Like
have
in 2020, they were doing that bullshit.
we had that in Baltimore. I'll get to that in a sec. But
Yeah,
because I wasn't even hip to like police shootings and all that shit yet. Because
yeah,
like camera phones and shit were popular, but not that popular at the time.
yeah.
And then we had an event here. It was Freddie Gray, that he was killed by police in 2015. I don't know if you've heard of that, if you knew about that.
Yeah. Yeah, all the mass movements. I mean, it's hard to get around them, but yeah,
Well,
I don't
yeah,
remember the particulars. They all sort of blend together to me because
yeah,
I
yeah,
do
yeah.
come from a place of lazy whiteness. So I just know
It
like
happens.
an innocent person shot, fucking mass
Oh yeah,
outrage.
yeah, yeah.
Then
That's if
yeah,
you aren't in the city, I wouldn't expect you to know all these minor details that.
but I remember the name Freddie Gray.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Freddie Gray. It got national attention. It was like 8 police officers. One of the police officers used to babysit me, so that's how kind of personally involved and how wild this journey has been for me. But they killed his ass. But then after the fact, they made a bunch of fake propaganda about how the kids at this high school were going to do a purge, even though all the kids and all the teachers said, fuck no, we're not doing that. That's a bad idea. No one's saying that. The police put that on Instagram and then used that as an excuse to get in the riot gear and do all that shit. Shut down the train, the only train, and then shut the buses down. So they trapped these kids and then corralled them for like 3 miles until they finally reacted. And then it became everything that everything saw in the newspapers about the quote unquote riots. So the police instigated that shit and created that whole situation. But that not a lot of people knew that, and it was a whole frustrating situation for me, and I would talk about that all the time, and it was really eye-opening to me, and that's like how I became like a true, I guess I would say, leftist. And this was 2 years after I had started streaming on Twitch, because the PS4 dropped in 2013 and it had the share button. So I was like, cool, my homeboy had an account on here. I'll make one. I do cool stuff on video games sometimes. And I
Yeah.
just like occasionally be like, hey, I'm already live and playing video games. I might as well stream. Like the same way a lot of people do this shit. So it had always been kind of like a video game platform to me. That was happening on the sidelines. I became aware of Destiny because I was watching like how do I say it? Like really produced like political. Like I was into like Secular Talk and the Young Turks and that kind of
Yeah.
stuff on YouTube. Just because you can't at the time, like the algorithm's not going to show you a lot of people like Andrewism, Saint Andrew, or like Black like
Yeah.
Mao or any of these people. So I
Yeah.
was into the lib shit on YouTube, and through that way became aware of Destiny. And I was like, oh wow, you can finesse being good at video games into talking about politics.
Yeah.
Because in terms of what I would tolerate and like just the amount of content I had seen from him, I was still into Destiny. Like, cool, he's fucking dunking on people like Nick Fuentes, blah 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 blah. This
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
this is at least entertaining to me. But meanwhile, in 2016, I had a bunch of, because this was also happening behind the scenes for me personally, which is also kind of why I got out of doing content, is because like I got out of like being terminally online and started doing stuff in real life. Because also 2015 into 2016, I found out members of the band that I was in were in this neo-Nazi gang called the Wolves of Vinland. And there's a
That's
whole
fucking. That's crazy.
it was
How did
intense.
that? What was that process for them? Did they just like? Were they just like? Was it a skinhead aesthetic thing, and then they sort of like?
So the way that they recruit is, so there's a genre of so there's the genre of metal, and then there's the
Yeah.
subgenres like thrash metal, death metal, black metal, so on.
Yeah.
So black metal is one of the subgenre. One of
Hmm.
the on lower on the iceberg, we'll say, of black metal is a genre called Nationalist Socialist Black Metal, or NSBM for short. And these bands are mask off, have
Yeah.
swastikas and have lyrics about Hitler and stuff, all that. And they're from Europe, like the one
Did you say
band,
like Scandinavia? Like
yeah,
I would imagine.
Scandinavia, Germany, Ukraine, a lot of them from
Yeah.
Ukraine, of course, Italy, you know what I mean? The
Yeah.
Wolves of Vinland themselves have a chapter in Italy. They've spread internationally. But
How do they
so
go from having a black bandmate to being in a supremacist organization?
so this is how I have to explain this whole scenario to everyone, and like how, because I feel like people have a fundamental misunderstanding about what white supremacy is, or rather like what these people look like in real life. So we could ask the same question like, why is Richard Spencer talking to Stardust, even though we know he's clearly a white supremacist? And a question I asked her when I talked to her, like, man is man's or a dog is man's best friend, but it doesn't mean that man doesn't see himself as a superior animal. There is a neo-Nazi called Tom Metzger who talks specifically about how the move in terms of actual political and martial strategy, because that's how they view this. They view it as warfare, Rahowa, racial holy war, or racial holy war. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they literally will do whatever it takes. That includes using spies. The one dude, I don't know if you can see it in the picture that we took in the band photo, but he literally had a secret squirrel patch on his vest. You get people to pretend to be liberal, pretend to like all these marginalized communities or whatever, because at the end of the day, liberalism is still a right-wing ideology. So it's not hard to just pretend to be like them, as long as you're not dropping like hard R's. You could
Yeah.
say a lot of objectionable shit that they would probably let slide
Yeah.
until they
It's a form of
eventually,
like traditional liberalism, or
right,
like
right,
traditionalist values in the liberal framework. Yeah.
until
It's
they
the same
eventually
thing.
get deaf to it, right? So Tom Metzger says, grow your hair out, cover your tattoos up, go to college, get into highest positions of power and privilege as you can. So police departments, law offices, banks, whatever. Just chill out and wait. And that's one of the strategies that they use also to infiltrate groups, like small groups on the internet, like anime and stuff like that. Is they will take something that you would think would be innocuous. So like right now,
Yeah.
the hot topic is like the whole the trans question, right? We have to
Yeah, yeah.
turn people's entire identity into a debate because that's like the hip thing to do now. We make people into debates. That's like one step in that scene is acceptable, that people are hesitant or reluctant to really see as part of like a larger ideology. But it's one of those things where people can just be like they depend at the end of the day, because they know that what they want is not particularly sexy to the average person. They live
Yeah.
and die by "we'll agree to disagree." They live and die by that. So
Yeah.
when you
It,
but yeah, so when you tolerate certain stuff, like in my case, there was just me, like I was saying, I was just, we'll say I was nose blind to a lot of this shit because I didn't know what a white supremacist actually looked like. I didn't know what their symbolism was. I didn't know a lot of that shit. I knew that it was a problem in certain corners, we'll say, of the music scene that I was in, but I didn't understand just how common it was. So what ended up happening was this dude was like in my house. The leader of that gang was in my practice space. Like the leader of the skinhead organization in the state that I live in. I've
yeah.
seen him in real life several times. I've done a lot of homework on these
Wild.
people. Yeah, but
Yeah, yeah.
we can get into all that. But essentially, as still doing the intro thing, and I'm going to try to wrap it up because we're getting close to like where I am
Yeah,
now
yeah.
because it's kind of complicated.
We moved through a decade so far. We're getting
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But I've started trying my hand at the whole I'll drip feed politics into my video game playing around like 2015, 2016 while I was going through it with these individuals that were in the band trying to infiltrate the scene, because how the DIY scene works pretty much is like you live and die by social capital. Someone has to like know you and like you. So like you start booking shows because you know the dude from this band and you always put on good shows, and suddenly all these people are coming to you shows or whatever. Any type of stuff
Like
like that.
being authentically of the culture. Like you have to be on the scene, like legit.
Right.
Yeah.
And it helps when you actually are authentically in the scene. It makes it way easier to pull people in and make them, when they're already amenable to you, just as a, even if you aren't aware of it or other people aren't aware of it, an authority figure.
Yeah.
If you're putting the shows on you or whatever,
Like a tastemaker or whatever.
yeah, a
Influencer.
gatekeeper, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So I called them out because there was a lot of gaslighting involved too, because obviously when you confront people, they're never going to be like, you caught me, I'm a white supremacist, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
so there was
And
a
it's
lot
the thing they're probably wrestling with too. Like even like when I was messaging you before in the chat, like I know I'm broadly lefty, but how exactly that susses itself out, it's sort of weird for people like finding their footing in the thing. And I'm sure that's probably true of fucking like people on the fucking right, on the fringe, and the alt right. If they're trying to figure out, am I a skin, a Nazi, or this or that, they're figuring out where the fuck they fit in still. And then they don't know how to like really broach that topic around people around them necessarily. I would imagine is going on too.
I don't necessarily think that, because that's the other thing as well, is that you don't necessarily have to immediately identify as like, I am a skinhead or I am this, that, or whatever. Because a lot of the people in the wolves would swear up and down that they're like, because here's the other thing too. I'm from a southern state. People will look me dead in my face and tell me that there's a difference between black people and Edwards and that they don't have a racist bone in their body, but that's just how it is. Because racism and white supremacy and stuff is beyond just like individual acts and thoughts of prejudice. It's an actual system and like background radiation that we live in. So like part of the propagandize, like people are there. So when people talk about not all people voting for Trump being Nazis or white supremacists, for example, they're technically correct, but they're missing the point. The point being that they're so propagandized that they have no problem enabling those types of people and engaging in that activity and seeing it as completely normal. Case in point, a lot of these people, well, or at least the excuse that they gave was that they were just into the music. They just wanted to be part of something, right? How gangs and stuff like that recruit just in general, right? They wanted to be because they have moot and fucking fist fight and because they are actual that because that's the other thing too is like they're not online. People like Jason Tankersley, people like Paul Wagner and such, they go online for the same reason that a lot of people go online to sell shit. That's it. They're
To
not trying
monetize
to
movement or whatever they're
right,
doing.
exactly. They're not here to learn, they're not here to observe or anything. Their entire their entire movement is dedicated to drawing new people in and gaining as much power and influence as possible. So that what they're doing is going to the gym and going to the firing range and voting and calling their school board and doing that type of stuff, which is what we're seeing borne out. Like, there's a reason why your schools are fucked up in areas where the KKK are, right? Like,
Yeah.
we just had the pride flag banned out in Carroll County, the headquarters of the KKK in Maryland, right? There's a lot of different avenues I can take because that gets into how Daryl Davis is low key full of shit too. But
There's never been like a more liberal person than Daryl. That
it's
fucking shit
pretty
drives-
nuts. It's pretty
It's so-
fucking nuts. I love when
it's
people
very
who aren't
impressive.
from Maryland try to bring him up to me because I'm like, let's talk about Daryl Davis. I don't think
Yeah.
you're ready for that, but yeah,
Yeah, like
I'm
as if like detransitioning or getting people like and it does speak to one thing that it does articulate, and it may be like a heuristic to dwell on Daryl in showing how these I think that for overt ideological white supremacy to prevail like that, to persist, I think they do have to be very fucking misfitty. They have to be marginalized, and it's like a failing societally of these
yeah,
fucking people who are so isolated and atomized that would fucking catch root for them like that, or that they need that sort of gang affiliation or community to fucking to feel
right.
like whatever. Whereas like if society was working functionally, those people couldn't fucking functionally exist. Not in 2022.
Right.
You know
And
what
I
I
mean,
mean?
and it's just, this is America, baby. KKK is as American as fucking baseball and apple pie. That's
Yeah.
just how our society is. When you get rid of one, two more appear. We'll always have the KKK until that shit is, you know what I mean? Like, that's just, he ends, even the individual people that he quote unquote converts and gets to like end the organization or whatever, a lot of them you can like look at their Facebook profiles about them talking about how they're literally just using him to sanitize their image or to like get out of jail free or whatever. But
Like it's a very liberal thing to talk about the KKK robes that you collected as if as if that's progress. You know,
like
yeah, I'm
it's
doing
it's
good. I have 150 KKK robes. Look in my closet. It's like I
right.
don't know, bro. That doesn't really look like progress to
It's
me. It just
wild.
looks like
The more pertinent part to me, at least the part that I think was always the most important part of the work that he did, was him showing what aspects of the community and of society that the KKK is actually a part of. Like
yeah.
the one, his like most infamous one, where one of the sergeants of the Baltimore Police Department was a grand wizard of the KKK and was in a plot to like bomb a synagogue. You know what I mean? But
I didn't see that. That's crazy.
yeah. I can
Yeah.
drop links for all this shit for you, but
Yeah, and people talk about the Rampart scandal in L.A., but it's not just L.A. where there's an underworld element to fucking
there was
cop and police world.
if you've never
Police
heard of
work.
the Gun Trace Task Force, look into them, and there's a series called We Own This City, and it's on point except for one thing, is that they make Sean Suiter's death look like a suicide, and when you watch that, you'll understand how silly it is. Like, that dude did not fucking kill himself. That dude did not fucking. I'm sorry. Maybe that's a conspiracy theory, but that dude didn't. Sean Suiter did not kill himself. But
I'll have to look into that.
so yeah, so I got low key obsessed in like 2016 ish, 2017 with finding these people because that was always kind of my thing, right? Like finding like doing like carding and shit when I was like a kid, and that was me
Does
like
that still work? I went recently
a lot of that shit doesn't really work.
it doesn't work anymore, right? Because I was
No.
even like, bro, they sell fucking carding shit. You can get it on Amazon. I was like bugging. I'm like, bro, how many lists do you get on if you buy this shit off fucking Amazon? Number one, and number
Yeah.
two, I was looking. I had like a little amnesiac fucking. This is like 2 years ago. This was before I started streaming. You know what I mean? And look,
Hmm.
it's not illegal to talk about. So, but I had like my little amnesiac OS on a fucking zip drive, fucking zooting through
Okay.
code. But like
Okay.
for that to work, you have to sort of like create like not a VPN, what's it called, an SSN tunnel or
Hmm.
SSH
It's
tunnel to
tunneling.
someone's
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
The Tor shit doesn't work, whatever. So in order for that to even work, like I think the only part of carding that works anymore is like going through carding is effectively dead. It's stealing someone's identity and live credit cards without
Yep.
them knowing, and then tunneling through to their a device that would be recognized by them, and then using it, I think,
Yep.
effectively.
I used to
Yeah.
just straight get, because people wouldn't use Wi-Fi passwords and shit. I would just get all their fucking financial information off of their fucking packets. I would just use a packet sniffer off their fucking Wi-Fi.
It's amazing to me, like so I come from like more of like a web dev background, so it's amazing to me how much like just brute force, like making three strikes you're out, three strike
Hmm.
lockouts, and just like any type of password fucking locks you out.
Yeah, I
But
was
like
never
it was,
smart enough for any of that shit. If you had a password on your shit, any of that, I would give up. But like,
yeah, it's literally, it's like it's effectively, it's like locking a door, and then someone who's just going around checking handles, like, I guess I'm not breaking into there. They make it seem like it's all like hacking and cracking out. It's like literally just going wiggling door handles to
I've
see which
also
one
done
opens.
that to, when you're a kid, maybe
Yeah, yeah,
allegedly, but
yeah. Same type of deal. So yeah, so I'm amenable to that, and I think there's a whole component of um, there's a lot of people that are sort of, I don't know. I always came from like an illegalist standpoint too.
hmm
There's something, and maybe it's just that leftism is subversive. I feel like, and
it's
it's very
also, and
anti-establishment.
that's
But
also why
like,
I identified so heavily with black anarchism, because illegalism is also kind of just a condition of blackness.
yeah, yeah. And then like even me, like just growing up, being in like just bad neighborhoods
Hmm.
and
Right.
existing and just like flipping
I grew
shit
up in a
just to
fucking
fucking get
amazing
by.
neighborhood, but the police, I was the black kid and I had behavioral issues because I had shit going
Yeah,
on at home. And this was the 90s. So we didn't have all of this rhetoric and stuff about mental health and all that shit back then,
yeah, true.
especially not for black boys, right? So,
Yeah, like it's same. I got kicked out of like a dozen schools, so there's always
oh
been a
yeah.
component of
I probably went to like 5 or 6 schools in total, I think.
yeah, and I think that that's a big component of it that we don't really talk about is like that. I think people like me specifically, I've been in and out, like I've been arrested a bunch and whatever, and I've seen just the lacking and just the like Kafka-esque bureaucracy and sort of like the people being unable to articulate the criminal justice, and that's sort of what like prepped me for fucking leftyism. I didn't like
You
I didn't
can't,
one day.
until you experience it. It's one thing, as even if you're super lefty and there's people that are, and that's cool, but like the thing that probably radicalized me the most was going to jail, which also happened. So in 2011, right before Occupy, I got locked up for possession of cannabis, which isn't actually, like, I almost got my fucking head blown off for it. I got raided, all this shit happened for a resi bowl. And
Wow.
so I had all that happen and shit too. And when I was 18, I actually got robbed by GTTF. We were hotboxing in the neighborhood I grew up in. I moved out, so the neighbors called the cops on us, and the police just came and robbed us, beat us for like $500 cash money and all of our
Holy
blood.
shit.
But so that type of shit has happened to me throughout my life, and you know, you can't really do anything against the police, but with just random fucking skinheads and stuff on the street, hell yeah, we can get it popping. So I
Yeah.
became obsessed with finding out who these people were, tracking them down, getting their docs, if not doxing them, just like making them know that there was still people in the area applying pressure. And
Yeah, which is necessary, like especially
yeah.
when like we don't really have a component of that in America so much because of all the pervasive fucking just like America's
We
basically a right wing country.
Well, we have
But
Antifa and we have different affinity groups and stuff in every city that is on that time, but we get
yeah,
demonized in the media and stuff, even though it's like with the bar thing, where it's like,
yeah,
motherfucker, like, do you want to eat at a skinhead bar? You don't want to eat at a skinhead bar. because white people kill other white people more than they kill anyone. If you're like, they think you're like a race traitor or something like that, they'll snatch you up just as quick. You don't want to eat at a
Yeah.
skinhead bar. People like
Yeah.
me are the reason why you don't have to eat at a skinhead bar. You know what I mean?
Um, I feel like in Europe, when you look at like or just I don't know necessarily the anti-fascist
Well, yeah,
fucking
I use
it's,
Antifa as shorthand just because of
yeah,
in the context of the conversation, but just
yeah.
general anti-fascist sentiment because it's not like a club. I mean, I know
Yeah. There's more of
I
a
got the
I feel like
patch, but it's not a club. I just bought it
yeah.
myself. I swear.
I feel like in when Europe, when you see depictions of them, and maybe there's more overt. I feel like there are more mask off there about their little para fucking Nazi organizations over there,
Right.
where it's like they march around and then they just get the shit, they just get their like head cracked,
Yeah.
or marching around trying to re-implement it. I think that they had a more vivid history of it with like Nazism or
Right.
whatever, or the stay behind groups that were like low key funded by Americans. You know what I mean? Like
I was
that
gonna
whole
say
thing.
it's because that shit was always condoned in America. So
Yeah,
that unless it's something huge like January 6th, because that's the other thing that nobody knows about is like all through 2020 and leading up to January 6th, the Proud Boys and shit, there was a reason why you would only hear about them in certain areas because they would like go to DC, they would come to Baltimore, and they would get their asses kicked pretty badly, and they would stop coming back because nobody gives a fuck about them, and it's like not worth coming here anyway because you're just gonna get fucked up. But like, yeah, there's like there was that became I like, and I got deep in the game like to like because I was also my house burned down in 2017. That's the only reason I was not also one of the J20 like defendants. A lot of my friends went to protest Trump's inauguration and got fucking locked up, and it was really fucked up. The band I was in, because was before I was really doing streaming like that too. Band I was in did a bunch of benefit shows for people's legal teams and stuff. But I got really deep in the game because I was also kind of drinking and kind of going off the rails.
yeah.
Fucking was like following like pagan bikers around at like 1 a.m. in the morning between Jason Tankersley is the head of Maryland Skinheads. Rick Indy, his associate, actual name is Rick Haught, he owned Label 56, which was one of like three or four white power record labels in the whole country that like specialize in like Nazi punk, NSBM,
So you're
all
really
that stuff.
tapped in because I don't know who those people are.
Yeah, see, like,
I don't know who
and
those
this is
people
the
are at
thing,
all.
like,
Like you're yeah. I
oh
don't want
yeah,
to say like I don't know who that is, and I don't know who
right,
that is, but
right.
I'm assuming that
Yeah.
maybe the
Yeah.
audience
This
does or
is
something.
no,
So that
I have links for all this shit, and this is why it's
yeah,
like I don't even challenge the LARP thing because it's like I've almost been stabbed, I've almost been shot, I've been close enough to smell a lot of these people that are the heads of the neo-Nazi organizations of the state that I live in,
yeah.
but they hyper focus on me like kicking a fucking scrawny kid in a goat moon patch out of my bar and being like, this guy is LARPing or he only did it because it's his job or like whatever. And it's like, all right. And that's why it's weird. And if I seem condescending sometimes, because I noticed Aiko Rules. I don't know if she was referencing me when she said it, but when I came into her stream, when she was reviewing Stardust's interview with Richard Spencer, the second one, she was talking about how people had like kind of a holier than thou attitude about it, and it's just kind of like it's not that I have a holier than thou attitude, and this is kind of getting into the lore because the way that I approached these people was not
isn't that an aspect? So the accusations, and I don't like, and this is broad, and I know it sounds like real pick me energy me saying this, but
oh no,
it's a component of like white fragility, right?
yeah, right, exactly, right.
It's a reflexive, like a pushing back, like, well, I look, it's not that weird, and I don't know, maybe it's like someone not wanting to, because it's a hard thing being of a white majority and then recognizing how fucked up
Right,
like
and it's
racism is and
also
whatever,
it's
and
not
knowing
also
what
not even just a white people thing. It's also just like well, I mean, I guess it is, but it's like the people doing it are not white, like literally.
yeah
They're so it's like just fly in the milk vibes, like token vibes. Like I've spent my entire life around white people. Some of my favorite people are white people. Got to defend the white people I love because they might be dumb sometimes.
Yeah.
At least
Yeah,
that's how I look at it.
but like when people talk about like holier than thou, there does seem to be, and I think the bulk of it is, even like when the people aren't necessarily doing it, they're doing it for audiences that are largely white.
Yeah,
You know
well,
what I
for
mean?
sure.
Like I feel like Rhizome, Ico, and Stardust,
Yeah,
Songstol, whatever, their
absolutely.
audiences are probably 90%
Largely
white
white. Yeah.
at least. Yeah.
And that is the whole thing because that was what I wrestled with when I came into the space was and we could tie up the intro now and then get into the lore because now
Okay.
that's a nice
All
that'd be a
right.
nice
Yeah,
segue.
yeah. A nice intro. I didn't know all that. I didn't know all that about you
Oh,
and like the roots
there's
and like how you got into that type of act as and music, which does have a lot of extreme,
oh,
especially
absolutely
metal
punk and
music.
metal, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of that scene, and
For
that's
sure.
a rich tradition in like the hardcore movement and the skin
Oh,
movement,
fuck yes. Yes, yes, sir.
trying to kick out racists and like
Hmm.
getting them the fuck out of the scene or letting them know that like
Yeah.
Nazi punk fuck off.
Cuz
That
if you
whole
give them an inch, they will take a mile every time.
yeah, and they appropriate the aesthetic to onboard new members. It's literally a thing.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. And they will use things that are seemingly innocuous as wedge issues to drive a wedge between it, like I was saying, like the trans issue, all that stuff. But
yeah.
so
Any chance where they see there's a wedge where they can pivot you back towards away from the unknown and the ambiguous to the false certainty of traditionalism.
right,
They like there's ambiguity about gender. There's which way white man, and they fucking push you back in a sort of a
right.
reactionary, and they have you take a step backward.
Well,
And I
that's where I ended up where I am is because around like 2018, 2019, I had kind of stopped following Destiny because he kind of felt weird to me. I couldn't explain why, but he just said some weird shit about like blacks and the black community, air quotes. So I landed on Vosh, and Vosh was cool, but I just got bored with that kind of content, honestly,
yeah
and I got burnt out from it. And also, an issue that I talked about with Cataran when we talked to Vosh, because Vosh seems pretty cool, but it's just like, specifically when it comes to black issues, there were few black voices that I really could follow and be aware of at the time, and he speaks for us a lot. Not, I won't say he does that intentionally. It's just that he says a lot of shit that you could hear from me or Aston or a Paradigm or
yeah
Catarana or any of us, right? So, so that's when I started getting more into that, and I went full at, my communist awakening happened when I was shown Black Panthers were MLMs and shit. So
yeah
I was going spiraling into full black anarchism, black Maoism, and
everything based in America now, all the standardized takes that are like progressive and good and
are
fucking
based in that
factual,
shit. Yeah.
it's based in fucking neo-Marxism for
Right.
sure.
Right. Right.
It's a dialect. It's an American. It's a sort of liberal establishment Marxist dialectic that happens, and it's an incrementalism
Right.
that all have, and
Well,
it's like anything positive in the last 60 years has been from those radical groups and the dialectic of them mingling into society
right.
here in America. Yeah,
We can, because I want to circle back to that because I feel like people have a problem when they hear like Marx anything. But what ended
yeah,
up happening was obviously COVID happened, 2020. There was the Breonna Taylor and the George Floyd protests here in Baltimore, and I was live streaming from the protest, showing the police smacking people with batons and disappearing people and all that good stuff. Was showing how the media was lying. They were saying that we were rioting and looting when the area that we traveled through was literally just bandos and strip clubs. It was right next to City Hall. It was just a wild event for me because up until that point, I was still doing I'm going to try to be really nice at video games. And when people watch me for video games, I'll drip feed the politics in. And then after that, and having the time that everyone had to do this shit in 2020 and discovering Hassan, that's when I was like, okay, I'm just going to lean all the way into, I'm just going to sit in a chair in front of the camera and talk about like fucking Eddie Conway and Huey Newton and Angela Davis and read medical apartheid and just do black anarchist shit.
yeah.
And
So you identify as an anarchist,
black
unless
anarchist, yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Just
Yeah, I don't know.
because like fucking with people like Ashanti Alston, I don't think communism has been implemented perfectly. Like when I think of Cuba and shit and how they treated people like Ashanti Austin, you know what I mean, and how they have their own issues with racial identity and that type of stuff. It
Afro.
just, yeah, it makes me pessimistic towards large scale centralized power like that. And also being, I don't necessarily talk about it, reference it a lot because I'm not from like a reservation or anything like that, but I have indigenous heritage, so like thinking about like communalism and how both like indigenous Africans and indigenous North American people lived and the different types of contracts and things that they have with each other without
Yeah.
having to have like, in my opinion, any type of large scale like centralized federal power like that should be exclusively for infrastructure, so like high speed rail, diverting rivers, building
Base.
fucking like that kind of shit.
You have to pull that shit out of the market somehow.
Right, right, right. And
Yeah.
I'm literally from the fucking home of the B&O Railroad. Like I grew up in Relay, the one of the first fucking train stations. So trains
I
of
do think that, like solar punk, like St. Andrewism
I'm
you
a
mentioned
yeah, yeah,
earlier.
yeah. Fuck yeah.
I really fuck with like the solar punk, the communalism. I do think that is a nice dialectic in between the sort of atomization of the suburbs and just even as simple as like four houses with a shared backyard. I
Right.
think that's a much richer neighborhood for young
It
children to
makes
grow up with.
it's because people have existed. There's two things. A lot of people who are not like from a specific class don't know what it's like to live communally like that, to live in a multi-generational household or to live in an area where you'll walk next door to get a cup of sugar from your neighbors or some stuff like that. Everybody's individualized where you got to have the nicest lawn and the nicest lawnmower and it's got to be nicer than your neighbors, and when they get a nice one you got to get a new nice one that's even nicer. That type
It's
of vibe.
really criminal, the sort of false consciousness that was bred by unregulated commercials in
Yes.
America. It just
Marketing
precipitated.
destroyed American culture.
Yeah, and marketing's heavily. It's one of those things that's so pervasive. You're like, how could you even fix it? Because you're viewing it from like looking at the consumerism like it's the status quo. Where in other countries it's just not. They
Right.
have heavy regulations on what you can market to kids, and Gen X and millennials in particular were fucking raised by
Oh,
TVs
we
with
got bukkakied with commercials. Holy
think about like
fuck.
those old commercials, like the everything from like cereals to candies to like whatever video game system to like just
Yeah. I when I
you
think
could
about all the shit that I asked my parents for just for no reason, literally just because I saw it on TV, it's pretty
yeah,
fucking nuts.
that's literally the whole game plan, right? Because
Yeah,
kids
right.
are an empty vessel, and you
Oh
can
yeah.
imprint on them the desire for all these things just by a
Yep.
certain combination of colors or branding or logo
Right.
or making the spokesperson a cartoon or whatever. And that's all the shit you can't do in other countries, but we just got fucking slammed
Right.
by here in America.
And that's how what happened with Marxism as well, right? Because he like Marx didn't invent something. And this is also part of the reason why I call myself like a black anarchist is because he was describing a phenomena, just like Charles Darwin was describing a phenomena when he was
Yeah,
observing Darwinism. He didn't invent Darwinism. So
yeah.
like when I say like, yeah, I fuck with a little Mao, I fuck with a little Marxism, Leninism, people automatically think that you're like, oh, so you fuck with the fucking Holodomor, you want everybody to start blah 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 blah. And it's like, fam, like, but they'll spin right on their heels and make excuses for why Thomas Jefferson owned slaves, right? Like
Yeah.
it's this weird double, yeah, it's a
Or
false
why
consciousness.
Abraham Lincoln, how he wasn't racist magically or something like that, even though he like objectively said that
People, yeah,
on its face that black people weren't as valuable or weren't as good or weren't at the level of white people. Like,
right.
and this
People
is
aren't
the
even
great
aware.
emancipator.
That's actually one of the things I talk about on my stream too, because people aren't even aware about that third position during the abolition. They think you're either pro-slavery or against slavery, and
Yeah,
the against slavery people were not all good. The ACS
yeah.
was had its home here in Maryland. They were the let's they were the original ethnostaters. They were the original let's put them all in a boat and get them the fuck out of here people.
Yeah, and not only that, with the abolition people, there was different like a lot of them. You could be against slavery, but that doesn't mean that you could be a 100% dyed in the wool a racist, but still be against
Oh
slavery.
yeah, absolutely.
Because for the same
Maryland was
reason
like
that
that.
you could be a skinhead and a vegan now.
Right.
They were like ideologically opposed to it for other reasons, but that didn't mean that they thought black people were equal, and that's
Yeah.
one of the main things.
Ecofascism. It can is
Yeah,
yeah.
the same type of deal. So yeah, you can have having incrementalist liberalism does not incrementalist liberalization of things doesn't mean that they're magically fixed. Race,
Right.
hasn't gotten magically fixed, and if anything, I would say that there's I don't know, like it seems to be the majority of the racism and the racial animus that exists has been just sublimated through other things and other culture war
Oh, for
labeling.
sure.
But they exist. All the segregation still exists in the form of like less so now, but like with redlining, Robert Moses fucking bulldozing through existing diverse neighborhoods to fucking build the interstate system.
Yep,
Uh,
that happened
uh,
here in Baltimore. Route 40 was the mayor just didn't like that neighborhood because black
yeah,
people live there, so he fucking cut a neighborhood through there or a highway through there.
preconceptions about them, the fact that those are lower cost neighborhoods, so less effective net loss to the things, the fact that poor people have less lobbying power, racism, all of those reasons made like
Oh
that made it
yeah,
easier to just draw a line through
I
those neighborhoods and
believe
go here.
Baltimore is such an interesting because I believe Baltimore was the first city that actually had like segregation laws. So like and we still have issues with class here in Baltimore to this day, even up to the point where there's Baltimore County and Baltimore City, and then there's the black butterfly in Baltimore City and the white L, and it's like
So there's like
it's
train line.
no, just like there was it's there's a book I would recommend reading called Not in My Backyard or Not in My Neighborhood. And I forget who it was, but it's about Baltimore and it talks about it's basically explains the history of like blockbusting and redlining
Hmm.
and like white flight and how one of the things that they would do is like let one black person move into a neighborhood or like tell white people, hey, there's going to be black people moving here, your property value is going to decrease, and all the white people would leave and move out and they would be able to scoop the property up for cheap and then sell it at exorbitant prices to black people, give them subprime loans, all that
Yeah,
type of shit that led to what we saw in 2008, all kinds of fuckery like that. There was housing covenants where literally the deed to your house would say no coloreds allowed on it. So you like literally were not legally allowed to sell that property to a colored person. Just all kinds of wild shit like that that's had lasting effects on modern society because there's people still have deeds that look like that to this day.
yeah.
And
Especially if they inherited them from their grandparents or whatever. Yeah,
right,
those are.
exactly.
There's probably houses that still ineffectively or in an unchallenged way still have like some sort of racial covenant. However, unenforceable it is, it's those paper laying in a drawer somewhere.
Right, exactly. So it's like also pretty based. Shout out to Alki. I don't know if you watch Alki, but I learned about Frederick Douglass's black co-op. It's one of the first black co-ops, or it might have been the first black co-op, but it was a ship caulking co-op in Fells Point here in the Inner Harbor. Um, there's
What do you think about the co-op movement as or workplace democracy? I've been seeing a lot of stuff about unions and a lot more interest in co-ops.
it
Do you see
feels
that
like
as
the
a
wave.
positive? Yeah,
It feels like the wave, like because that's been a thing here in Baltimore. That's what we've like. The podcast content we do is way more serious, and like because a lot of the people that listen to that are just straight up completely disinterested in Twitch. A lot of that other shit doesn't even come up, so it's all just straight up local Baltimore politics and stuff like that. And a lot of the stuff we do on there is interviewing people who are like agitating in the local area. One of my friends who's from the metal scene who put me on to a lot of my favorite music. Shout out to Billy Jarbo, who's in the band Nostalgique. Um, he he is helping to organize. He's one of the unionized. Like we interviewed him, and they're unionizing the only Apple store for Baltimore.
it's base as fuck.
Yeah.
I'm sure Apple does not like that.
Fuck no, they
It's
hate that shit.
it's especially important for like Apple, Amazon, Walmart, and other large pervasive. I don't know what percentage of the workforce works for Walmart, but I'm sure it's a fuck
A
ton.
lot, yeah.
I'm sure it's a bunch.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's a
got to
problem.
be. There's a Starbucks here locally that was unionized. Micah, their union that they already have, they're trying to fuck them over, so they're getting ready to do their thing. We interviewed someone that's running for the school board. We just try to do, and that's also kind of like what I've part of what I intended for my platform to be here as well in terms of like the streaming thing is
Yeah.
obviously you have fun, do the goofy stuff, the fucking the drama sometimes or whatever, but I honestly didn't want to do any of that when I first did my thing here. 2020 to 2021, like last year, late last year, I would watch like Dylan Burns and shit, not like super closely or super religiously, but just being aware of those people and being like, cool, you can,
Especially hopping over from Avosh,
right, right,
it seems
right.
like yeah, I became
There's a
familiar with Dylan
pipeline.
Burns. Yeah,
Yeah,
from just yeah, and
for
plus
sure.
there's not Twitch politics is fucking small and insular. At any
Yeah, it
time, like
is.
in the
It's a
Twitch politics
click.
thing,
It's its own
yeah,
like click.
there's only 4 rows of people in Twitch politics at any time. Like it's
Right.
very hard if you're above like a 10 viewer Andy, you're known
And the Twitch,
effectively.
the Kingmaker system makes it so that if you're not in like the top 20 people, nobody's going to see you anyway because they're not going to look
Yeah,
for you.
yeah, and then like it seems to be like yeah, you have to go on. You have to have a talk with Destiny. You have to have a talk with Osh. You have to
Right.
have a talk with Dylan for people to see you because
Right.
a Central Committee and Hassan don't really talk to people.
Yeah, right,
So
exactly.
those are the 3 people like who I can't think of bigger political streamers than them effectively.
Right. And Dylan
Uh,
is from Maryland as well, from PG.
hmm,
So it was like, cool, you're from the most affluent black community in the country. I'm out PG a lot. One of my best friends lives out PG. I go to DC all the time, fucking with GoGo and shit. Like, cool. Thinking that like we would link up on like political content. So I did
what
the
happened with that? So Dylan, I've been on Hippy Dippy like 4 times. Dylan has been kind. He's popped on the stream
Mhm.
or whatever. When I my last Twitch man, Dylan was like one of the only people to reach out to me and said, "Hey, I hope you're good. If there's anything I can do, let me know or whatever."
Oh yeah, for
So
sure.
he's been cool with me. Uh, but I
That has
understand
not been my experience.
your experience might be different. I was wondering if
Right.
you can inform me because I'm not very good at keeping up with drama. Maybe it's just
Right, right,
because
right. It's just
I
not
just
interesting. Like at a
it's not.
certain
I don't
age,
like it.
and
Yeah.
also for me, because I don't know who a lot of these people are either. I find out about them when I'm going back and forth with someone on Twitter. Someone else
Right.
replies and like ratios the fuck out of me, and then I'm like, who is this? And people that I talk to have to tell me. But
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
but so I started doing the hippy dippy recruitment things, which is how I met like Stardust and CTV and them. Eventually being like, okay, Dylan will notice me, or he'll realize I'm from Baltimore because I got the flag or whatever. Reach out. I did 2. After the first one, I was like, that was fucking ridiculous. That was not what I was. That was not what I was thinking it was going to be on any level, like fractally. But they reached out to ask if I wanted to do it again, and I didn't want to. But my mod Fader, shout out to Fader, and he was like, "It's goofy, but maybe it won't be as goofy this time. Maybe they'll set it up a little differently, and the exposure will be good, and you'll get to talk to Dylan." Blah blah blah. So I did the second one. The
Yeah.
second one was
The energy from panel to panel varies, and some of them are fun, and some of them are fucking grueling to get through.
yeah,
Some of them are real tough. You're just waiting
yeah.
for people to shut up, or every time you think it. Some days, like we're just not.
Well,
It's hard to
CTV was
interject.
on both panels, so it was like I was just like I'm good on this, and I didn't
Yeah.
want to. Once I realized that you have people like, let's say Josie, for example, that are presented in terms of the marketing of the whole thing as
Who's
Josie Rose C is a trans streamer who also does a trans survey. So like this is someone who would be the authority on xenogenders and neopronouns because it's
okay?
literally her job to go
Oh yeah,
around the country and
I
be
remember her
like,
now.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and you're gonna have her up against like someone like fucking like Sansa. You know what I mean? Like they're presented, they're on the same tier list. So it's just this, and this is the issue that I have with like when we when we're seen quote unquote debating or like talking or dealing with people like we'll say for example like politically provoked Prit or any of the people from like the Crucible or politically
Yeah.
provoked or anything like that. When we deal with them a certain way, it does more harm than good because for the average bystander, anybody just walking by, it's like that quote where it's like you don't argue with an idiot because people walking by won't be able to tell the difference. It's the same vibe where it's like they if you don't engage with them, then they have to stay in their little corner of the internet. But if you engage with them, you might get the people who like see it and get laughs out of it and understand your position, but you'll always also get those people who don't care and they're just like, "Oh, this person seems legitimate because I see this other legitimate person talking to them."
Yeah, so you have both things. One, and it's the same reason why the atheist community is or the scientific community, let's say Richard Dawkins and whatever, they don't really like talking to young earthers and whatever because they
Hmm.
do not feel like they're coming from an equal ideological footing, and it only benefits the people, it only benefits the fringe
Right,
thinkers,
exactly.
legitimates them in a way that they are unwilling to do, and very often it's very easy to like it's the same thing
It's
what
like why Richard Dawkins doesn't debate with Christians and like that type of
yeah,
thing. It's just like
yeah, like yeah, and it's I saw that Sam Harris is very problematic, but he
he
said the
is.
same thing. Yeah, very very anti-Islamic and whatever, and the bell curve Charles Murray
Right, right.
bullshit. Very problematic figure.
Intellectual dark web starter pack.
Yeah, IDW fucking whatever. But he, I think, correctly talked about his Brett Weinstein, another intellectual dark web guy, who effectively said he's like Brett's not right about vaccines, and it's problematic platforming him because it's very easy to impose anti-vax stuff and legitimate it by putting it on a platform when it's just not. It doesn't have any academic footing, and it just
Right.
shouldn't be really, and it's irresponsible to do it, and it's very easy to implement arguments that just derail the thing, and someone will just say a thing and then you have to say 10 paragraphs to undo that one sentence that
Right.
they just interjected into the
Exactly.
audience head.
Right.
So there's that component to it, and then there's also the thing where so not only is the legitimizing the other side by talking with them, there's also the thing by proxy you absorb the cringeness of them by arguing with them, like you said, like when you never argue with fools, blah 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 blah, because you then will look foolish by you look like to the centrists and to the status quo watchers watching it, you look as nutty as the other fringe person.
And
So
just
like
in terms of also like being black and online, I can tell you that visibility is not always a good thing. And you're exposing yourself and your audience to them and their audience. So there could be overlap of people coming over, especially, and it gets into that dangerous territory, that slippery slope territory, where if your audience is already kind of edgy and irreverent, how do you know the
yeah.
difference when people like that come over trying to infiltrate? So there's that aspect, but also,
So when you have a meta ironic
uh huh,
chat room, it's hard to tell when
yeah,
someone's being meta ironic
yeah.
racist or
When does the ironic racism just become racism, right? But
like the Sam
also,
Hyde iDubbbz thing. It's like who could even tell? Like first of all, like just if you squint and look at their audiences, they look the fucking same,
hmm,
except some are probably more dyed in the wool ass racists, and the
yep,
others are like YouTube comment larpers.
right. And it's on the other side of that. If your community is goody two shoes, you've just exposed them to a bunch of fucking neo Nazis who are now going to try to do hate raids, bot raids, all that stuff that they love to fucking do to silence people.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I do think that a lefty black streamer. First of all, black streamers in Twitch number one are very like outnumbered, and
for
I feel like
sure. Hmm.
when you look at that, that is definitely the case. It is. So
Yeah,
there's
absolutely.
so you feel like I'm sure I would feel like if I was there would be an
Yeah.
inclination and a pressure to appeal to a majority culture, right? To create an accessible version of what you do that appeals to the fucking status quo, right?
So
There's like that component of it,
yeah.
and it allows you you're a focus point for like literally what you said, hate raids and
Hmm.
outrage or to be seen as an example or memed on in fucking really fringe fucking discords or Reddit
Right, right,
or
right. So I always had like made peace from the onset of knowing just by virtue of this shit being on the internet, period, the audience is probably going to like the internet, and me speaking English being mainly in America, excuse me, like it's probably going to be mostly white people watching me. So
yeah.
the way I wanted to navigate that was at least number one, find the black people and let them know that my channel or my platform would be kind of a safe harbor, especially if they are, to quote Fred Hampton, if they got revolution on their mind, you know what I mean? Then I'm a space that's sympathetic to that. And I don't, I'm not like out here calling people tankies, any type of shit like that. Just I'm just existing, and just because those spaces don't exist, and maybe this can be one of them, maybe not. There's probably a bunch of reasons why there can't be, but I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. But also, trying to find white allies in whatever avenues that I can. That's why a lot of my community and a lot of the other streamers that I link with are people who are intersecting in different oppressed communities. So, critical ace theory, like fucking Josie, I already said, fucking, I follow people like Poly People and Willow, and fucking, I've raided Riverboat Jack a few times. People
Yeah.
like Merrick, like sex workers and stuff. Like, there's mad different intersections, like women, trans people, fucking. I always try to uplift Bing Princess because she's a black woman, Katarana as well, and all
Why
my
is
other.
being why is being princess familiar? Oh, is that the other person who was on like
Yes,
the
with
controversial
Sansol and
thing about
Rhizome. Yes,
yeah,
yes, yes,
yeah,
yes.
okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it's another thing where, like, I don't really like going at other black people on the platform as well, specifically for that reason, because of I don't
You don't want the wrong person to
I
signal
don't
boost you.
right. I don't like how I don't like how the potential it is for it to be presented. Right. So if
Yeah.
me and Rhizome go back and forth, or me Bink whatever go back and forth, blah, 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 especially right wingers and stuff, because that's how we get used as tokens anyway. You know what I mean?
Does Rhizome identify as black?
Does he?
I don't know. I don't know. I
That's. I mean, if he doesn't,
that's
that's wild. But
well, I'm not sure. I don't know why I would ask that, to be honest. But yeah, I
I
could see
mean,
the
it's
aesthetic in doing
it's a
that.
valid question though, honestly, because there was that
Yeah,
dude
I've
on the
never really
Crucible that
considered
they
it.
said. I'll say this. It sounds like a weird question, but you saw how I received it.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah,
I never really thought about it until
it's
right
something
then.
I didn't think about either. Where a lot of people, and this was something that caught me off guard about one of the first. Shout out to Shark 300. It was weird, but and if I'm misquoting him, or if anyone watches the VOD or whatever, and I'm misquoting him, then check
How
me
do you
on it.
say his name?
I say
Sh-
Shark 300
Oh, yeah. I think I just call him
or
Shark
just
Zero. Maybe
Sharky.
I'm Shark. Yeah, I don't know how to
Yeah,
say it. It's one of those names where you don't know how to say it out loud, and I don't think
yeah,
I've ever heard him like he doesn't do it. Hi, it's me again. Blah blah blah, and says his
right.
name. So I just
I've
call
always
him
just
Shark
say people
Zero.
say Sharky, but yeah. But
Okay.
yeah, he
Yeah, yeah.
said when he was growing up, he didn't heavily identify with blackness or his blackness, or I'm not sure exactly how he worded it, but that's like it can be a thing. The extreme version of that is like fucking I was arguing with some fucking nut from was it the Crucible or something that was talking about the one black dude that they have on there doesn't even identify as black or something like that. Some weird shit, and you'll find that it's
Like
kind
a
of common.
position of like a position of convenience. You know what I mean? Somebody who's just sort of been
Well,
able to like go through or something,
that
or
can
is it like
so it's a tokenizing the fly in the milk experience, and I've talked about this a little bit with Aston, but like when you exist, and I can speak on it as a person who's had that upbringing. When you grow up with the fly in the milk experience and being tokenized, being surrounded by white people, you find a way to subconsciously do that or accept that just as a means of survival. because that's the only way to be accepted, like, in the group and just have like any semblance of a normal life, being the only fucking black person. So like
Yeah, yeah, I could see that.
when you carry that
Um,
into adulthood, it can, like, when you don't recognize it and it's unchecked, and it could be even more like, especially if you have white family members or like any of that type of shit, like the desire, because whiteness is not like, whiteness is itself a class, right? Like it's a political class that was designed as like in white supremacy. So
like
like,
it was, and I was listening to someone. I think it was who the fuck I always Smite Knight, who was we were talking one time, and it just sort of came up about how like whiteness is almost a capitalistic fiction too that
yeah,
enabled you to commoditize a whole other
yeah,
people by making
exactly,
them black and then legally commodifiable.
yep, that
So
was
like
it.
whiteness, yeah, it's sort of a so and then there's a sort of majority culture, noble or prestige that you get from just being able to walk around and vote and shit like that,
Hmm.
which then becomes pervasive and undiagnosable. You don't see it, but it's there until you realize that the those the status the society doesn't work for you, and if it doesn't, you're not white or
Absolutely.
poor, I guess.
Right.
Also,
Right.
but
Because
you could probably
there's,
speak to that better than me.
yeah. Well, I mean, I'll say that there was, I grew up with, the area that I grew up in was pretty affluent, but being that I would get kicked around to a bunch of different schools, going to both private and public school, my public school experience with the lower class white kids was, even still to this day, those are the people that I vibe with the most as a member of the proletariat myself. I fuck with the dishwashers and the fucking cashiers and the baristas and the bartenders and the bussers and the fucking OnlyFans women and all that.
The misfits and the punks
Right,
and the
right.
fucking
Yeah,
those are my
right.
people. Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the pool players and the motherfuckers who like fucking smoke
Right.
along with you in the parking lot. Like
I
those are
play
like those are my
poker
people.
I play poker once a week. Like, yeah.
Yeah,
Like those are the salt of the earth. Those are the true, those are the masses. That's who Mal talked about, right? So
yeah.
like,
There, Hawes said this too, and I didn't really think about it until it's like into it seems obvious and or it doesn't. It seems counterintuitive because you think it's the opposite because you think of like South Boston, and you think of other places, or like maybe like the fucking what's the Jersey Shore. You think of like white reactionary fucking anti or like racist reactionary white racist poor people. But the reality, Haas said effectively, like the there is a part of just commonality with black people that like poor people all across the nation feel, and you don't really
yeah.
see racism until you get into the higher strata of the suburbs.
Yep.
Suburbs are racist as fuck, and
Yeah.
it's actually like the people who live in the city who you think of
Right.
as being like cosmopolitan elites or whatever. They're the people actually more okay with it,
Right.
and it's the people who live in the burbs. That's where you actually encounter this sort of ideological racism
That's
because
why
they
you
have
get
the
white kids who think they can say the N word sometimes. That was
yeah they
actually what
are
we were talking about when I was talking to Rizom. It's
they
funny.
have that comfort cushion which affords them their otherness, right? Because
Hmm.
they literally fucking white flight it
They can
out and they
take the
have their
costume off at any time. They could
yeah
they could climb the
yeah
social ladder if they want at any time.
and it's also like a consequence of their own white flight. They
Hmm.
otherize themselves and they created the fucking anxiety that they feel by white flighting the fuck out and not being with the people, like the
Right. Yeah.
people like where people actually live. They fucking they left, created an anxiety, and then that use that anxiety as a pretext why they have to make legislate their anxiety away. It's sort of
Hmm.
like a self-fulfilling loop
Right.
of like white immunoresponse or
Right.
something.
And whiteness is also like a social contract. So it's like you get all the benefits of being in the club. You get, better credit, fucking, you don't get hassled by police, all that shit. You can move into nice areas that the HOA wants to let you live there.
Yeah,
Um,
it's easier interviewing in
mhm.
some places.
Yeah, my first name is Kevin, so it's tight, and I always throw on my most like. There's a joke I made because people ask me if like people find out from Baltimore and they ask me to say something from The Wire, and they think I'm gonna start talking like Snoop, and I just start talking like Ziggy. It fucks them up every time. This shit's hilarious.
Which
But
one's Ziggy from The Wire again? I don't remember. It's been a couple years.
he was like the dock worker's youngest kid. That was a fuck up. That
Oh, like season two?
yeah, the
I don't really
boring
fuck with
season.
season two that much.
It's
Yeah, I don't
yeah,
really fuck
it
with that season that
sucks.
much. Yeah, it seemed like first season of The Wire is sublime.
Like I'm
It's like
trying
10 out of
to
10.
just because I've like now that I drive a forklift and I have friends that work at the docks, I've like got so much more appreciation for that area and that like the history of like Sparrows Point and shit. It's
Yeah.
made me want to revisit that season like with that fresh like set of rose tinted glasses to see if it kind of accurately depicts that life and like to get into that kind of mindset of that life or whatever. But yeah, I've always thought that that was definitely the weakest season. It actually made me stop watching The Wire for a minute. It took me a while to get back into The Wire.
It was hard to get through, but then it sort of came back around to the end, like the season three, season four, or whatever. But as much as you can be afforded, the Wire's interesting as a cross sectional thing because it gave people who are very privileged an
Yes.
insight into actual mechanics of, and I think that
That's what I think is good about We Own the City because it shows people what the Baltimore Police Department is actually like and how they really get busy out here.
what
Except
is that?
for
What's We Own the City? Is
same
that a
guy that
thing?
made The Wire, yeah. It's got John Bernthal as Sergeant Wayne Jenkins, who was the head of the gun trace task force that were
Oh,
basically
okay.
police who were also drug dealers, essentially.
Yeah, same thing
And
as the Ramparts
right.
scandal in L.A. Yeah, yeah.
Right. During Freddie Gray, actually, during that whole riot and all that stuff, that dude busted into a CVS and like dumped all the perks and shit into a fucking trash bag and just rolled out the front. They caught it on CCTV. It was
Wow.
nuts. But yeah, this is like the type of and this is the type of shit that I like. You can't really impress on other people, right? Like I can't make other people care enough to know that level of detail about shit in their area, but like the very least, the thing that I want to impress is like if you're going to call yourself like a liberal or a leftist or whatever, at least touch feet the street in just like the teeniest little area where you can and when you can. So I'll like put people on the food not bombs. Like if you could just like send money here or just like help serve food or drop off food in your car or whatever you can do, just do that when you can do it. Whenever you can do it is appreciated. And
Is Food Not Bombs is still around? Wasn't
yeah,
it like a Occupy Wall Street era?
well they've been around for longer than that, but yeah, they were doing stuff then as well. But they're like
Yeah.
a global movement. It's
Mm,
like an anarchist organization. They don't really talk a lot about politics, but that's essentially what it is.
yeah.
It's different from like a charity or something like that, and that's like mutual aid. And the goal is to create a world where food not bombs is not necessary anymore. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, Frackle and I actually had a long conversation about it. And I did a fundraiser. And that's the other thing because that's how I also became super aware of you is because you rated me when I was doing the Baltimore Abortion Fund fundraiser.
Ah, yeah, yeah. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, so I like to do. I think that should be like a crucial role in terms of like what we can do from where we're at right now. You know what I mean? If our thing is just like sitting
Yeah.
in front of the camera and doing theory and like memes and like making it interesting, making it cool, and trying to influence other people to get involved in like electoral politics or direct action or whatever,
Yeah.
then part of that would be to use that because that was my first thought when I saw Hassan. Right, it was like man's getting paid fucking thousands of dollars a month. Like,
He's
I,
making a lot of fucking money. I don't think
yeah,
people realize how much money he's
right.
making. It's he's making a lot, even without ad reads or whatever. He's making
My
a fucking shit ton.
I would completely change my city with that much money. So
Yeah.
that was my first thought, and I was like, even if I don't get there, whatever I do will help. So, and it's always been cool. I've raised both times I raised around like $600 for both the fundraisers that I did. The first one was for Food Not Bombs. My boy Gary, who also plays music. Gary Fry is also a dope artist. He's in the band Crawler, but he cooks every Saturday for Food Not Bombs.
I feel like if I was pressed and had the access to the saw and grilled him, like, why aren't you doing this or this? He would like low key be like, I fund the like a food kitchen. I
That's
feel
what I'm
like he
saying.
probably
Like, yeah, he's
he
probably
probably is, but like
just doesn't. He's low key
he
about it.
doesn't talk about it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would assume that he is because you can't. There's no
Right.
way he has that level of money and he's not doing anything from a
Yeah.
like from
I've
a progressive,
and
even like a progressive perspective.
right.
He's got to be doing something because
And
that's a
I've
fuck. He's making like 100,000 a month. He's
Yeah,
making a
hell
shit
yeah.
ton.
And I've said
He's
as
making a
much
shit
before
ton.
as like he's doing what the fuck anyone would do. What would you do? Get a big ass house in Cali, put your moms and your whole family up with you with a pool and a fucking garage and everything that everybody needs. Make your streaming setup the nicest possible, most comfortable, dopest streaming setup you could possibly have, right? Fucking buy swagged out gear, a nice ass car, and fucking and then just stack paper after that and then do what you can with what you got after that.
Yeah, I think I would definitely. I like the idea of like Zach App's thing is like community garden, and I understand that's. But
That's sick.
I do like that idea. I don't
That's
know
not
how
easy
like
to do in where he lives
yeah,
though.
true, and not only that, like I don't know how that. I don't know how much land that would require to do that. I feel like you could do
It
a
requires a
lot
lot
with
of
like a
water too.
yeah, like a kitchen though. A kitchen
Oh,
to make
kitchen.
sure that like people are fed. I feel like that's where that
I feel
when
like
I gravitate.
a community fridge is probably definitely it, if he's not already
Yeah,
doing that, because that's going to be my next fundraiser. Actually, is
yeah.
we got Be More Community Fridge, and people keep that. I know a few people that keep that shit stocked and keep it running. So
Something I feel like is very scalable that you could do, especially if I was just coming from a position of having a lot of fucking money and giving it to the people who need it the most, is just making sure you have like a close, like basically the Salvation Army without all the anti-trans and fucking like racialist bullshit, without all the other weird fucking drama like the Salvation Army and those other motherfuckers seem to get into, but like everything but like a sleeping place. Because I feel like that's what requires the real estate, and that's where you get people who like you have to
yeah,
deal with other stuff like people like detoxing and other
right.
stuff
That
and
kind of
having to
stuff.
enforce a drug policy and all that. But if you're
Right.
just worrying about clothing people, feeding people, and giving them a place where they have internet access, can make phone calls and shit like that, like a stop off point during the day, like go grab your lunch, go grab a shirt, hit a
That's what I
job
would
interview.
do. That's what I would
That
do.
seems to be the most scalable thing,
That's like
and
my
you get
dream
some of
is to
those.
just like set up a PC bank. So like like cuz my focus is always like kids also cuz they
Yeah,
also intersect with every possible oppressed minority. So like you get off school, you got nowhere to go. You don't want to go home. Fucking come
yeah,
play Counter-Strike at my fucking PC bank.
or
Come
just like
study or listen to
just
beats or make
broadband.
beats, whatever. Yeah, yeah, just
Yeah,
high speed
and making
internet.
yeah, and I like that idea because it's the cheapest thing to do too. Is
Yeah.
you just need like a T1 line, and you need like well, you can get volunteers and you can buy the food. That's easy, especially if you like have even like you don't even need to be as rich as Hassan because effectively when you're scaling it up like that, you can like I've worked in some like short order kitchens and whatever. You can scale up meals pretty
Oh, hell
effectively,
yeah.
especially if you're using like rice and some veggies and stuff like that. You can buy them in bulk and
Yep,
whatever.
yep.
You can make little stir fry meals with like
Yeah,
chicken
that's what they
thighs
do.
and
It
stuff
that's
like
what
that.
Gary does with Food Not Bombs for sure. Yeah, it's all
Yeah,
vegan, but yeah, you can make a little go a long way.
yeah, for sure. And I
That's
think
pretty much probably what I would do. Like music venues or just like art venue in general, like just like a fucking just vibe. Because I feel like the more, even though there's one or two spots like that already, the more of those there are anywhere, the better. So
yeah, yeah, that's definitely anything like that helps because there's deep, pervasive social. Like I'm, like I to me, I think Marxism and Marxism is as pervasive academically as the theory of evolution is just sublimated with other things. Like if you look at sociology, especially from having the context of like Marxian literature, and you read sociology, it's like they're saying the same thing. It all comes from a position of lacking. It comes from
yeah,
people being food, money, housing insecure, and like literally that's the whole fucking underlying basis of like the fucking Maslow hierarchy of needs, Marxism, sociology. It's all fucking the same idea. It's like basically when motherfuckers don't have shit, things get tedious. Things
yeah.
get real rough real quick if people are food insecure. If they're insecure about their ability to engage with society in the future, there's going to be problems. and people are effectively, I'm a secular humanist. I think that we're part of mammalia, right? And I think that
Yeah,
things go south real quick when basically evolved apes start fucking getting insecure. Like you have
for
you
sure.
have violent fucking outcomes, and it's bad. But we're pretty easy to pacify.
I
You know what I
watched a
mean?
TED talk about like true psychopaths that like have emerged because of modern culture, and like he was talking about people that like if they had the capability to, they would murder every single person in the world, and was talking about like bioengineering and stuff, and it was like bordering is like I don't know. Did you play the game The Division?
No, I just started. I've just started playing video games again after like 20 years,
Oh, I feel
and
it.
I launched onto I played Red Dead Redemption 2, and then
Nice.
I'm playing the Far Cries now.
Okay.
So I'm just getting used to the mechanics of a keyboard and
Of
mouse
keep,
myself.
yeah, I feel that.
Yeah,
I've been playing since like I've been playing keyboard and mouse first person shooters since '99, which is wild to
nice.
say out loud. But yeah. So basically, the plot of The Division is that this guy essentially 3D prints this like hyper lethal virus, that's like got mixed with like Ebola, Marburg, Black Death, all these different like viruses in one, puts it on $100 bill and spends it on Black Friday at Wall Street, and like it completely destroys New York City's population in 2 weeks. They have to develop a quarantine zone because it kills like 96% of the population, something insane like that. And it edged kind of close to that, but the dude was basically saying like it's not totally far fetched that we would eventually get to a point where in like a home laboratory like biotech or something, you get to a point where you could generate organisms like with very little knowledge about what.
I've
Yeah.
seen molecular printers. I've seen people
Hmm.
do that. They literally, or maybe it's the effort or whatever, or maybe there was like poly whatever. But I've seen effectively where people were printing like a molecule, where they did a blurp blurp blurp.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
like
yeah.
with a 3D printer types array. Maybe not a molecule. Maybe it was some other a compound,
Right.
a polymer. It was probably a polymer,
Mm.
right? It was probably gloops of things, and they like 3D printed together. But that's the first thing I thought of effectively.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
then
yeah.
you can just print shit. Then you can just print reality. That's
Right.
kind of crazy. If you have
Mm.
like carbon, this, water, blah blah blah, you can just do that
There's
shit.
like metal 3D printers. I could get a fucking wood filament for that 3D printer over there, so whatever I print looks like it's made out of wood. It's nuts.
Somebody asked about you. I said I asked chat last night, and they said ask him about the ghost gun movement.
The ghost
Ask
gun
him about
movement.
yeah, like about printing guns. Oh, is it because you have a 3D printer? Is that what they
Yeah,
wanted
yeah,
to
yeah,
ask?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That shit's
And I
interesting.
and I just said, well, first of all, I wouldn't want him to do anything that would implicate
Yeah, yeah,
himself
yeah. Fuck no.
or
Yeah,
whatever.
I don't
Yeah, yeah.
do.
But
Yeah, I don't do any of that shit.
because I don't even know what the laws are about that, but I feel
You
like they should
so
be.
it's one of those things where it's like, and I mean, who knows with the Supreme Court doing what they're doing now? We'll see. But it's one of those things
Yeah,
where it's federally legal. Like
yeah,
the United States Constitution says shall not be infringed, right?
yeah.
But if you're in a state like Maryland, the law here is that you can have ghost guns. Like as in, if I wanted to print a gun right now, I could do that, but I would
Yeah.
have to serialize it myself and register it with the sheriff's
Huh.
department.
Okay, that's
So
a
then
lot.
it's yeah, so then it's not really a ghost gun,
Right.
but
Yeah,
if
yeah.
I wanted to just get a pistol without like having to apply for HQL, go through all the classes, go through all the stuff that's required to get a handgun in Maryland, like if I just wanted to do that, I could. However, there's like the Biden ban, and there's also some state level ban shit on like polymer 80s and that kind of shit. So they
Mm.
basically just made it a pain in the ass to do.
Yeah.
There's a way to do it
To do it legally,
legally.
right?
There's a way
Yeah,
to
yeah,
do it legally, but it's not a ghost gun at that point because you
yeah.
have to register it with the state law.
It's sort of a funny question. It's sort of like, what's your take on doing crime? It's like, well, like
Yeah, you probably
I don't
shouldn't commit
know.
crimes, or the police will come
Yeah.
get you, or the
No,
fucking ATF will
officially,
shoot your dog.
yeah, yeah, which is true. They will. Why do cops like shooting dogs so much? Is it just the barking? It throws them off their game or
It's
something.
just shooting. They just really enjoy shooting people and animals, honestly, because they can legally do it and get away with it. So why not?
I think it's what it is. It's like a strat. Like if it's like a Call of Duty strat or something like that. They go into the room. They're like, kill the dog because that'll bark you
Right.
and it'll take like a minute off your reload time. It'll take like
Yeah.
5 seconds
That's
off
the
your
tech.
reload. So you just go through and shoot the dog first, and then it's like that way you don't get distracted or something doesn't
Right.
come and you don't accidentally shoot. So just shoot the distraction first, and then you can focus on possibly shooting the homeowner
Yeah. If you're
next.
like in like Oklahoma or like Tennessee or something, yeah. If you get caught with a gram of weed, they'll C4 your door and then 360 no scope your dog. And
Yeah,
then
like literally, it's like that Russian guy. Who's the Russian gun guy who was effectively taken down by that? Like someone
oh,
was
Jay
mailing
Stark.
him. Is it Jay Stark, the guy who doing the Russian
He
accent and
was
doing all the guns?
uh
Yeah, he
I,
like something like it was like an eighth of weed or something like that, and he got like fucking years. He was incarcerated for years because of that.
oh damn, no, I didn't know about that. This dude Jay Stark was the dude that designed the FGC 9, which is like 90% printed 9 millimeter like carbine
No,
pistol.
no, this I'm thinking of
But he got killed by police.
I'm thinking of yeah, that was a different thing. I think I saw a Vice documentary about that, or I saw another documentary, and then Vice did a documentary about that as well.
Because
I
that
just think
community, all that shit, all that lore is so deep. I don't honestly know a whole lot about that, but
yeah, I don't recall a lot of it, but
I just
the
make
end
like,
result. I thought it was pretty cool, like that it's gotten so advanced that you can shoot a gun.
yeah, I just make
Like,
fucking baylets from Berserk.
what the fuck is that?
Have you ever seen Berserk? You never seen Berserk?
Is that like an anime or something?
Yeah, it's a manga and an anime from the 90s. But
Well, what do you use that for? Was that a nose on that?
yeah, so it's like a face where it's like you can see the mouth's in a different spot, the eyes are in a weird spot, the
Oh, okay.
nose.
Yeah.
And I won't spoil it. I recommend checking it out because it's like one of the best animes ever. But the Bailet essentially causes something called an eclipse, which is basically a doorway to hell. And the person that uses it gets granted like godlike power. Essentially, sacrifices their living body to become an ethereal being of godlike power.
Somebody in the chat is saying Russian FPS. That is who I was thinking of. Yeah.
Russian
The guy
FPS.
Yeah, that guy. Like he would fire like the fucking chain guns, and he would like fire a tank.
Oh
and
damn!
Whatever.
I think I did see some of that stuff. Yeah,
Yeah. Anyways, like
I was
that guy,
I was kind of into that content too, like household hacker and all that stuff. That stuff's good.
Yeah.
Good YouTube.
Yeah. So he basically was just like a YouTuber, and I think he ended up like irrespective of like. Then he had a federal a federal whatever FFL
FFA.
or whatever the
Or
FFA. Yeah.
FFL.
Whatever the fuck
Sorry,
it is. He had
not
like
FFA,
a
FFL.
a gun slinging buddy who had a business who wound up like dead. He like was found dead in the shop type deal,
Damn.
like shot in the head, and then like later he was busted for like an ounce of weed or something like that. And
Sheesh.
effectively he was just a YouTuber doing like gun shit. So that's kind of
That's
where
wild.
we're at with that. Okay, so let's circle back. So we covered the lore of the so what happened with Sonsol and Rhizome and Stardust? How did those
Oh yeah.
three?
So okay.
How did your main encounters with the? Because I would say Sonsol, Stardust, and Rhizome incorporate a lot of the core of the Twitch politics scene.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily the biggest, but they're the people that are like very networked in there.
Definitely.
So how
Right.
did you wind up?
It gets into how kind of things played out with Dylan. So I
Yes.
first became aware of Stardust on the Hippie Dippy recruitment panels that I was on, where like she was talking about how like we need to get rid of the school to prison pipeline because it doesn't put people to work or in prison fast enough. Truly,
Like a mean position.
no, she was dead ass. Like I was like, what is this take? And I like asked her to like elaborate on it, and she was still like, no, like we should get rid of the school to prison pipeline, just put kids to work or just throw them in prison. And like I didn't even know how to challenge that shit because I thought it was a
Yeah.
meme position. I was like, okay, we're just memeing. Like, all right,
Yeah, that's. I would assume that was just like a fucking like a. It sounds pretty. It's Chet saying it's Mimi. I don't, but I don't know enough about her. I've never really heard Stardust's ideology. I've just heard her arguing with people and moderating
that's what I'm saying.
panels.
She doesn't have any ideology in that, and this gets into how I like ended up not fucking with these people. It's because she id pulled. I mean, obviously it's Stardust, but she id pulled the fuck out of me in this debate. So what it was the debate was, it was Kyle Rittenhouse, and it was like, was what he did self defense or whatever, and like obviously right, and they were all defending Kyle Rittenhouse like, nah, he, it was cool that he fucking went there with an AR-15, like they shouldn't have fucked with him and they wouldn't have got killed. And I was like, yo, like, we're really just comfortable with him literally going there with an AR-15, knowing what it was and what was happening there. That's just
Yeah,
like,
like that. My position is like, so the legal argument is effectively okay, but what happened when that fucking pedo dude rushed him or something like that?
right.
That's what the court is tackling. But my issue is like, what the fuck was he even doing there? But
Exactly.
that's legally not the issue,
Yeah,
right?
right,
The
right,
issue is like what
exactly. Right,
happened.
right, right.
But yeah,
But ethically,
I'm not
yeah.
charitable. I'm not charitable to him whatsoever for fucking deciding to literally go there and like
Right.
fucking
This was
protect
before the
these
verdict of the case, though. Like we
Yeah, yeah,
found
yeah,
we found that out later, obviously. But like
yeah.
in terms of legally, we were gonna see what the precedent was for it. But
Yeah.
ethically, like, why the fuck would you do? That's like, why would you do
Yeah.
that? You don't go to
I'm
protest
not.
with firearms. You know
I
what I
am
mean?
not. I'm not a volunteer police officer. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's like
facts.
I'm an illegalist. I'm an
Yeah,
illegalist.
facts.
I can't recall ever once in my life being pro police. So
Yeah,
I don't understand it. I've
yeah,
never like when I see. I grew up with like in Southern California with the riots and whatever. It was the rioters were always low key correct. They were
yeah,
always right. You know what I mean? Even if their actions were, you couldn't justify everything they did. The animus that they were reacting to was always stuff that I vibed with. Like, you know what I mean? It was always like anti-racist. It was about police corruption. It was about systemic fucking inequity. Like I understood what they were doing, and I would not necessarily. I can't imagine going through arming myself and hopping in and being like a volunteer police patrol
yeah.
or whatever the fuck. Like never
It
in my
makes
life
no
would I.
sense. Yeah, but
Yeah.
here's the argument Stardust made though. She said that me asking why Kyle Rittenhouse was there with an AR-15 would be like asking a woman why she went on a date with a man if she said that she was sexually assaulted by him.
Wait, what? What was that
Yeah,
again?
yeah.
I like
Okay.
I blacked out halfway through
Okay,
that.
okay. So you know how like if a woman's like, this guy sexually assaulted me, and your
Yeah.
response to that is, well, why did you go out with him? Why that would be fucked
Okay.
up, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
She's saying that asking why Kyle Rittenhouse was in Kenosha with a fucking AR-15 is the same, is like that level of fucked up.
Victim blaming.
Yes.
You're effectively it's a victim blaming
Like
thing.
I'm victim blaming Kyle Rittenhouse if I'm asking him why he went to a violent protest with an
Yeah.
AR-15.
But like yeah, but I think that going on a date with someone is much more common than it is to be a anti-mob force, volunteering to be an anti-mob force and traveling cities to do so.
That's how they
That's
clapped
the
me though, because I was like, "Really? You really bring an AR-15 on every date you go on?" And they were like, "I guess you don't know about women in this country." And I was, that's when I was like, "Okay, we're memeing."
yeah. Yeah, but apparently I don't know, I can't tell. I can't tell. And it seems to be that like I feel like there's people who are like destiny orbiters. Like
Yep.
Destiny can sort of like he can pinpoint some sort of rhetorical failing in what you're saying and sort of elaborate it, even if he's not coming from a place of like ideology. He's sort
Right.
of like it plays devil
Center
advocate
right.
from yeah, he plays devil's advocate and sort of like from the status quo position, which
Yeah.
is probably center
Right
right,
wing. Yeah.
right? Yeah, so like and then he can articulate why your argument is maybe not germane and like counter. But I feel like people who are in the orbit, they sort of ape that, but they just take the counter argument but can't confabulate why.
Yeah.
They're just
Exactly.
saying and so they take a position that they think is sort of like that or that they've gleaned from watching a lot of Destiny, but they can't really argue it correctly. And
Right.
then they fall back on like just liberal idpol fucking weirdo like Radlib And while they're the first people to make fun of like wokeism or whatever, they often revert back to id poll reconciliations about why they're right and you're wrong,
Right. Oh
effectively.
yeah, absolutely. So there was that whole thing. The recruitment panels were goofy. I tried to fucking hit the Listerine and wash my mouth out of them and just move on.
Yeah.
Kept doing news content and educational content and just video games because I'm largely a FGC streamer. I failed to mention that in the intro, but I also am mostly a FGC streamer. I stream Mortal Kombat 11, a little bit of Soul Calibur 6, but not as much anymore. But I'm like one of the best Jax players in the world in Mortal Kombat 11.
I saw that one clip of you enduring a slur.
Oh yeah, right.
So I was not engaging. So Stardust recently, she tweeted at me and Mowdy effectively, and I messaged Stardust privately. You know what I mean? I talked to
Right,
her.
of
I didn't
course.
want to engage
Yeah.
in the thing. So like, but I saw like you going into it in the comments, and I was kind of laughing at some of the shit that they were saying to you in the comments. Number one,
It's
like
funny.
you seem to have more of a tolerance for engaging with that kind of thing than me, because I would just like log off Twitter. I just like literally when like someone tweets at me like that, I'll like close down that tab and go like work on my book or walk my dogs, or I'll like literally make it a point to do anything but respond.
Yeah, that's what like sometimes I feel that way because that's how I was initially. Because initially I would just mute these people. Like Sansol is still muted. I still haven't really responded to him on Twitter. But
Yeah.
like other times, I just wake up and choose violence, and it's specifically with her because this is how it would even because this is why it's fucked up. Is like if you actually, it's all public record. If you actually go back and look at our first interactions after those two recruitment panels, after not fucking with them, not talking to them, whatever, the times that I came on Stardust's stream, I was nice to her and tried to approach her gently to kind of be like, hey, I know what you're doing, and I understand that you were well intentioned, but maybe the whole platforming Nazis thing isn't the way to go about it. And she just went into the whole nobody's gonna tell me who I can and can't talk to thing. So I was like, okay, that's cool. I'm not.
I don't mind that recalcitrant position if you're coming from like a better opinion. You know what I mean?
Right? Yeah,
I like
exactly.
that virtue when it's something I agree with more.
Yeah.
And at the same time, like I see what she's doing and I understand. Like I don't like being told who to fucking
Oh
talk to or
yeah, for
not
sure.
either.
So
But
and
that doesn't make the first choice any better
right,
though. You know?
exactly. And I
Yeah.
realized it was an emotional response, so I was like, okay, I'm not gonna press the issue. I'm just gonna fade out. And things didn't start getting weird until the Amir. I'm gonna ask you, but I'm sure you'll say yeah, like the Amir Locke shit, the guy that got shot by a fucking police.
What
But
was the I don't remember the name. What was the Amir lock?
So Amir Locke was the guy that he had a concealed carry license. He was in a friend's house. He was asleep on the couch. His pistol was next
Oh
to
yeah.
him,
The
and
hands in the blanket guy type
right, right,
thing.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
The police no knocked him.
I don't like no knock warrants
Yeah,
whatsoever.
me neither.
Like I'm
Obviously,
never on the cop side.
right, yeah,
There's not a
facts.
position where I'm ever on the cop side.
Right,
Like there's no
yeah,
dynamic where I'm like,
same.
well, they should have done this. It's like, no, I don't believe in no knock warrants. I think that like it's legal to have a fucking firearm, and you can't like kick it down people's doors for oftentimes bad premises, bad warrants, bad like with that aren't signed on, aren't even fucking legal, and have the aesthetic of keeping the peace while you're just kicking indoors and shooting people. I don't agree with that whatsoever,
Yeah, it's
systemically in function or anything
right,
about
right,
it.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's bullshit. But I when it happened, I chilled out and I played it cool. I covered it and stuff. Other people covered it. Aston Mac again. Shout out to Aston Mac TV. Organized the vigil and everything. And so I simply tweeted, I want to see what CTV, Stardust, all these people's. I think I added Destiny as well. I wanted to see what their take on Amir Locke was
So
because
that's kind of provocative.
it
You
was
know what I mean? It's kind
provocative
of
for sure.
like half a call out. You
Yeah,
know what
yeah,
I mean?
yeah.
Just
It was, but it wasn't hostile. I said I was gonna check their content out, see what their takes on it were, and it was one of those things where I tweeted it like a solid 12 hours before I went live. So they could have tweeted something about it. They could have like Googled it and said something about it. Fucking even streamed before me. Like literally anything. And so they replied to it like, "What's this? I don't know about this." And I was like, "I don't know." Like I would naturally, and I was also responding emotionally because it's like, fam, like you told me that it was cool for this dude to run up in a fucking protest with an AR-15, but you don't even know who the guy that got killed with his concealed carry like firearm is, and your whole thing was self-defense, that it was self-defense, self-defense, self-defense. Like, yeah. And it wasn't even just them, because I called out everyone that was on the panel, because it was just, that was the meme at the time. I don't know if you knew that, where it was like all the people who were super on Kyle Rittenhouse's side are super quiet when it comes to Amir Locke. So I was like, yeah. And if we're
So
being,
is it none like the NRA? Well, who's the other cat who was shot in the front seat of his
oh,
car?
Philando Castile, yeah.
Orlando
That's,
Castillo, same thing.
mm-hmm.
NRA fucking
Yep.
silent as a church mouse on that. When it's
Mm-hmm.
like a person of color or something like that, like these right-of-ways, I don't know, for whatever reason they
Right, right.
don't. They're not screeching in protest
Tamir
to that.
Rice. Tamir Rice had a toy gun. They, and it's even also there was here in Maryland, state trooper shot a white kid that had a fucking BB gun in his hand. Clapped his ass. This was like a few months ago. Maybe it might have happened last year, but like, yeah. So it's like, especially if you, because a lot of those people were calling themselves sock dems and shit. I'm like, okay, if you want to crib the leftist aesthetic, if you want to cash in on all the 2020 woke points that everybody has, busted out of the
Yeah.
block above our heads like Mario, and collect all them coins, that's cool. Then you need to put in the bare fucking minimum work of, when I ask you about this kind of stuff, you don't respond by calling me a pussy bitch. Cause that's what CTV did. And then Stardust was like, I'm gonna look at this shit that Endless Cemetery requested. And I was like, I didn't request that, but like, cool. And that was what I said.
Yeah.
She was like, I didn't know about this, but I'll look into it later. And I said, bet. Because that was all I wanted. I was satisfied, literally.
CTV is an interesting thing because when he's not going into character, he's like a Christian nationalist. So like effectively, his position is not very different than a Groiper, except when he's in character. But it's weird when he's being talking calm. That's when I find him unsettling. Because it's like,
Yes.
wait. You believe like angels and demons, and you think Russia's going to
You're
nuke the
actually
United
into
States?
this, yeah. The
Yeah,
the
it's
whole
sort of like
paleocon shit that's
yeah.
not related to the Neo Confederacy at all.
Yeah, like his positions on panels are way more digestible than like the stuff he says comedically is way more digestible, which you think is his being extreme. It's actually the reverse. When he's talking quietly and calmly, that's when the shit he's saying is sort of like disturbed. It's sort of like he
Yeah.
thinks America should be a theocracy and the
Right.
like legacy American theocracy. It's just like whoa, that's sort of a weird thing, but it's very
And then you
interesting, and I
have
don't know
the
why.
the pride flag swastikas and shit.
Yeah, I wasn't the maddest at that because that seems like almost a meme
It
I would
was
make.
on
But
it was on brand, but it's just
yeah,
like okay, it would be different if like someone I
it
knew that
depends on
was,
who's
I
making
was
it.
just about to
Yeah,
say that. Someone who's like,
yeah,
okay, you're definitely on the left, and I would even still feel uncomfortable with like,
yeah.
that's funny, but I don't know if that was necessarily your joke to make. But like people that just straight up have the like queer people are groomers take, like, no, you don't get to make those jokes because
I don't know why on panel culture there is a sort of a thing where there is like on the hippy dippy thing there is more of a stated WWE dynamic. It's a wrestling. It's professional, but like I would say if you look at the
so
politics server and not to a lesser extent Prime K and some of the other things, but there is this component of utility that people get from center right people where
yeah.
they're like they're part of this milieu.
Mhm.
We all benefit from the theatrics of these panels.
Right.
And so like it's not only that people are put up with, it's like they're very close with a lot of right wingers and center right people, and it goes above and beyond theatrically arguing with them on stage. They have personal relationships with a lot of these
Right.
people, and that's something like when I'm looking at it, it's not something I feel as comfortable with. Now while I might comedically sexually harass Britney from provoke Britney in a very funny way, as a meme. I wouldn't necessarily back her viewpoint or call her a friend or anything like that. But like like for instance with CTV, I feel like a lot of people, or even I don't know, I can't imagine. I don't know enough about the space about the other right wingers in there, but there's this impulse to say, oh, they're one of us. They're fine. They're like they're protected.
Yeah, they have their
They're
own
in the trust circle.
debate. Like,
We like them more than we like leftists. We like them. They're in the cool group. And if you talk shit about those right wingers, a bunch of like liberal centrists are going to start like tweeting at you or something like that, and it's
what
a
I'm
weird
thinking
phenomenon.
they think they accomplish is making their own pipeline of like right wingers finding them and eventually landing on them, but that's like never how it's worked. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that there's a utilitarianism they get from having, like, I understand, like, fucking Spectre once told me one time, like, the utility of Lauren Southern is that she's right wing enough to get the points off, but she doesn't TOS. So you can have her on your panel
Yep.
and be an example of a right winger, but it's palatable. She's white, she's aesthetic. You can have her on the thing, and she's a known name, so she's infamous, aesthetic, and then she won't TOS. So that's the reason they would have them on there, whereas with other people they won't. But it's like that's fine, but that there's another thing then, like, but Destiny and her becoming like friends is a
Yeah.
weird arch,
It's
sort of like an
weird.
and Coulter Bill Maher thing. It's like I don't know why they're doing
It's
that.
always been weird for me just because that's not like, I mean, you know the time I'm on. Like when the Nazi comes in the bar, I don't debate him until he decides that he's lost and looks silly and then leaves on his own. Right? We don't even let him get in there in the first place if we can help it. So it's like why you would even give these people exactly what they want, which is a microphone and a captive audience, is like you've already, to me, in terms of the strategy that we should actually be viewing that shit with, you've already lost because you've ceded the ground to them. You've allowed them to infiltrate your platform. You know what I mean? But that's even before we get to the implications we talked about earlier of what their exposure to your audience does.
Yeah, and I don't even know. I couldn't even articulate, or it's unknowable to me, like what, like if I have Richard Spencer on, I don't know. And to be honest, I didn't see that thing. Like Aiko just tweeted at me, and she like linked that 9 hour VOD of her going over the Richard Spencer thing. I'm like, fuck, holy fuck, I would not do
That's
that.
yeah, that's
Number one,
nuts.
it's
I'm
too much. It's too
Yeah,
much.
I'm gonna
But
do
and I,
that. Not tonight, but I'm gonna do that just because people suggested I do it. Just because it, and that's the other aspect to it is I'm the one that actually has experience with that kind of shit. It seems like among others
yeah.
in the space, but I'm the only one that's willing to engage with her to the extent that I have until she blocked me. So people have encouraged me to do it just because people are going to say, how can you criticize it? You never even watched it, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, I just already know how it's going to play out, what it is already. Like,
Yeah, and I'm not even against, like, I like hardball interviews. We all like the aesthetic of that. But there's a thing that comes with access and sort of the benefit and the utility that someone gets. Like, for instance, with Richard Spencer, you want, if the utility of booking him is the fact that he's infamous and will get you higher profile and clicks, there's going to be a perverse incentive to fucking do softball questions and even
oh,
and sort of
absolutely.
and broach topics in a more civil way, which maybe allows him to squirm. So that way you have the aesthetic of having asked a question, but not maybe. I don't know. I didn't watch it, but the clip I did watch, it didn't look like. But maybe there was, which is not to say. I'm sure it was a long
Yeah,
interview, and I didn't see, but there was like very cordial moments of that
for
conversation.
sure.
That's to be fair, that's all I've seen.
Yeah.
But I'm sure
The,
that
I'll
she
say the
apparently she
clip that
asked him
I,
about the Nazi shit
the
later on.
Charlottesville or whatever. Yeah. The clip that I watch is from people who watched it. So, but yeah, that's part of the reason why, yeah, I want to be able to definitively judge because that was the other thing is like, what do we even get that we don't already know? You know what I mean?
People are saying that there was like something, so like Richard Spencer effectively is not walking back his beliefs. He's saying
Oh,
he's
of
trying to
course
do
not.
something more ambitious with the alt right than the alt right was with his was it Apolloism or whatever. I don't know what the fuck he is, but that's what Ico effectively said too, was that he's doing a bigger thing. So I mean, so
Oh,
I don't know what that
interesting.
entails, or if it's overtly white identitarian or what. I don't know, but there are people saying that like that was her giving him that exposure sort of got him to prompt that out of him. But I feel like if he was just going to roll out and give out that information about the big
Yeah,
ambitious thing he was doing, then it was going to be inevitable from a press release or anything else
right.
what he had going on.
So that was and that's my other thing is like you're not going to see like the neo Nazis that you need to be most afraid of are people you're not going to see until you see them. So like you're not going to learn anything about, say for example, the Maryland skinheads in Maryland, the group that are recruiting people who are shooting roids, practicing fucking chokeholds and stomp outs and shit in the gym, going to the firing range, having meetings in bars and stuff. I got all
Yeah.
their Facebook profile pictures and shit. I could find all like this is like I said, I got an unhealthy obsession with doing this shit. This fucking one man fucking Batman shit with these people back in like 2017, 2018. But you know, those people are people that move in silence to the point where the head, his profile picture is him in an MMA class with a bunch of like black people and shit around him. So the first thing you ask is, well, how can it be racist? He's with black people. There's black people right there. But
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, I'm glad somebody's like on the beat covering that stuff. Other than the FBI, it's nice to have someone other than the FBI fucking going in and like
yeah,
putting pressure on white
the FBI
supremacists.
investigating themselves. Yeah.
It's nice to have someone de-escalating the right wingers for once. So
And that's
are
the
you looking?
thing.
Do you have any plans of making any like short form content about that or anything, or is this just sort of
Yes,
like a
my
offline activity?
so like a lot of that shit has been offline because it has to be. But so the I'm gonna do a lot of Baltimore centric content just because that's what I've experienced and that's what I know. Starting with the flag behind me because people always ask about the flag, so I'm gonna drop the flag content. It's gonna lead into like working class vibes, but also I'm probably going to do like a master video just on my experience having unwittingly just because I was drinking, more kind of liberal minded, and just in it for the riffs and the fucking blast beats and the dope music, not really noticing or kind of making excuses for or allowing other people to gaslight me into accepting, you know, white supremacy, like white supremacists, actual card carrying, patched in, vested fucking gang members of a white supremacist gang in my band, like in that close proximity to me, to the point where the leader of this gang or a member burned down a black church in Virginia, right?
Wow. Holy shit.
Yeah, like sitting close enough to like to touch, right? So having that proximity to it in terms of the real world, no LARP, no bullshit, no online teenage grapers, no fucking Richard Spencer failed mass movement, fucking cults of personality, real harmful, dangerous potential killers, right?
Yeah.
And me being in that close,
People without like broad political the people who aren't concerned with broad political candidacy in their whatever, but like are local, working locally to fucking make shit worse, right? Looking in, I think the more pervasive, the more perverse, the more problematic aspects of that are what can be done locally in small groups.
that's what
I
made me
think.
start snooping them is because I found out. Because initially I was like, okay, cool. If they got their little Odin cult in the woods and they want to fuck each other's sisters and shit and eventually inbreed themselves out of existence, cool. I found out they were getting involved in Virginia politics. And that made me fucking be like, yo, what the fuck? Because I thought their whole thing was like rewild yourself, whatever, whatever. But then I found out they were involved with like Kevin Deanna and fucking what's the guy's name? Jack Donovan. I think he goes by like
Are
Jack the
those
Mallet Brancher.
are those like state legislature, like
No, they're
Virginia?
just like big talking heads in that whole movement, like the identitarian
Okay.
movement, Identity Europa, all these like groups that were active at the time. Matt Heimbach is from here in Maryland. He formed the White Student Union at Towson University, which is like 15 minutes from here. I know all these people, not personally, but like I've seen them with my peepers. I've peeped them with my two eyes, right? I've seen them in protests. I know where they're at. I've seen their home addresses, all that kind of shit.
Yeah.
And that's not to say like anything like I'm gonna do anything TOS or like against the law or anything like that. It's just like I like to know where those people are and what their activities are, especially
I
when I'm in that close proximity to them.
I think that's a fucking amazing story, and like I didn't realize that there was that much lore to that. Like, do you even
Oh
like
yeah,
that almost sounds like a movie almost. You know what I mean?
I
So like,
guess. But that's how I
if
ended up in the bar that I ended up working in is because it's a punk and metal like dive. That's the aesthetic.
yeah,
Some of my favorite bands and the best performances I've seen there. Kind of had a falling out with them. I don't really fuck with them anymore. But the bar is called Auto Bar. Lots of metal like Sepultura and shit. Like all those bands, when they come to Baltimore, that's on the short list of places to play if you're a punk and or metal band, right? So I work security in there. Naturally, what's the Dead Kennedys song? Fucking Nazi punks fuck off, right? That's
true.
legit on the wall, like posted a sign on the wall, like that was going to be whether or not the people who own that establishment, like how we came to that conclusion was as a community. It wasn't we need to have this policy as the people who own the bar because it's a bad look or a bad vibe just to have them in the bar. That kind of factored in, but it
Yeah,
was literally
you're not coming at it from a brand risk fucking PR perspective.
exactly. It's
Yeah,
literally there's people of color, there's trans women, there's all kinds of people working and coming to this fucking bar regularly. That's like their one place of solace in their life of hardships of being in that minority and being out in the world. Of course, we're not going to let those types of people in the fucking bar, right?
there was a particular anti-racism that comes out of especially like the English schools of punks that's like permeated
Yes,
other scenes, but
absolutely.
effectively like
The
punk
sharps,
scene. Yeah, the punk scenes in particular have been policing their own against fascists for like a long time. And so
decades,
yeah,
decades. Yeah, to the point where the state of Maryland itself is pretty split. Like Baltimore City is still they're kind of still that was when they tried to start creeping back because those cats were from Virginia. They didn't know. And unfortunately, a lot of people here were not hip. They ended up one of them was friends with someone who used to work at that bar, but that's a whole different story. But yeah,
it seems like a silly thing to talk about when people who are comfortable status quo, centrist fucking libs who are on probably just doing status quo, they don't have an ideology and they don't have, for instance, like when you like, I don't want to continually go back to Marxism, but when you go through that and you look how explicitly anti-communist, anti-trans too, if you look at like what
yeah,
the
yeah.
literature Nazis were burning, it was anti-communist, it was a communist and trans literature,
Right,
gender identity literature, stuff like
right.
that. When you look at the history of like counter protesting, counter movements, and counter reactionaries, it's literally people uphold or people funding and or positioning and or arming fucking counter revolutionaries, fascists or whatever, and white identitarians is a very American flavor of that. And people think that you're silly when you bring it up until they actually fucking look and realize, oh, these little fucking groups are everywhere.
Yeah,
But they
hell
don't,
yeah.
they're not a sexy narrative and they don't really work into the liberal post-racial American narrative. So
Right.
they're like blind to it and they're more, and what gets me is when people sort of bend over backwards to be conciliatory to them, as if like as if there's like some benefit societally to that, and
Right.
I don't really get it.
Right. And that's how I fucking um you know, that's the time I've been on just like I pulled up on all these streamers that describe themselves as like sock dems or leftists or whatever on the panel that we were on, and I was like, why tighten up basically, and they didn't take it well.
Yeah.
Fucking
I think
CTV.
America, and we've spoken to this before, or I've spoken about this a lot. There, America has a particularly cucked vernacular politically,
Yeah,
where
for
we say
sure.
left to denote Democrat, right?
Right.
Even though there's parties to the left of the fucking Democrats, Democrat is left and Republican is right, and then
Right.
everything's on the
Hmm.
spectrum of that. And they're not even talking about like a Deleuzian fucking homogeneity versus individualism. They're not talking about that spectrum.
They're
They're
not
not
even
even
talking about
necessarily.
capitalism.
They're not even. Yeah, they're basically not even talking about
They're
capitalism
just
or
talking
like.
about social programs that literally every fucking body wants, left or
Yeah,
right in America.
very populist accessible,
Yeah.
very populism accessible, and that's almost like where now populism has become synonymous with progressivism. It's sort of an interesting thing, and they're sort of blind to the fact that neo-Marxism sort of dictated what that progressive view in America is neo-Marxism, and then it's filtered through a populist stance, which is like what Jimmy Dore, Trump, and all those cats are doing.
Right.
They're sort of weaponizing, they're uniquely doing their own brand of weaponized centrist populism using a neo-Marxist framework for values and virtues,
Right.
and then which sort of enables people to be in that center right milieu, but almost still claim to be sock dem somehow because they're
Yeah.
latching onto very popular programs.
Right. But that's also how I fucking uh, got into it with Sansol, because Sansol decided to insert himself into the conversation that I was having with CTV and Stardust. I had no idea who the fuck Sansol was before this. I thought he did a thing with Sharky or whatever, or I don't know. So I thought he might have been okay, but he fucks. I guess Samantha fucking Bananas, like one of his mods or some shit like that. I think he's just like,
Samantha?
yeah, I think he's just like a
Hmm.
fashy, low key, just hiding his power level, using the N word and saying like edgy shit like that. But and literally in our first interaction, I'm just like, what do
No,
you?
to be clear, so you and me went back and forth. So you did call me out on Twitter personally about me starting the end chain. So I basically effectively did what Sonsol did too, was starting like the end thing, and I did it
Facts.
to just to get a laugh out of Chud. And I will
I
own
feel
that's
that.
fucking stupid for me to do post ironic fucking racism. I've not seen Sonsol do a lot of that. He said to me, what he said to me is that he started off like a sock dem, but he, or maybe not, maybe somebody else
I've
was close to
also,
him
because
saying,
the argument that we got in was him using the term subhuman as well.
yeah. Yeah,
So
that is. Yeah, I've seen him doing that.
there's a
Although that,
lot of bit, and then there's multiple things that if it was just that, I would give it to you. Just
yeah,
it's just in total with a lot of it's part of a pattern of behavior to me. It
yeah,
gets into the territory of when is it not ironic anymore territory to me.
yeah.
So
I don't know. Like to me, the main problem that I have with Sonsol, and so I'm friendly with Sonsol. He's popped on the stream. Like I wouldn't call him a friend. I would say he's a streaming acquaintance. It's
you're
someone I
civil
know of
with
in the
him.
space. You know what I mean? He just retweeted me on that. I just tweeted Destiny really had the audacity to release a manifesto without doing a mass shooting. He retweeted that. So, but other than like being in the space, so I don't really. And to be honest, I'm not very familiar with him because I don't watch a lot of liberals.
Yeah.
I don't really watch any liberal streams, so I would have to take your word at what he seems. But I've never seen him do anything like mask off necessarily. But then again, you might
They
be
never
have more of
do.
an acute. You may have more of an acute nose for that kind of thing.
Yeah. The people in his immediate circle and the people that he chooses, it's just like when you find out people have like transphobic mods and shit, you can just peep the time that they're on where you're like, you're not really about this shit, you're grifting, because we don't at least from, and this might be me doing my fucking LARP purity test shit or whatever, from my perspective, those people already have power and dominate most spaces anyway. So if we're trying to appeal to people that they target, why the fuck will we invite them into those spaces?
Wait, who has the power? I'm sorry, I was reading.
Like
Someone dropped.
transphobes and racists, fucking conservatives, just like general pieces of shit that we make excuses for because they help us make our infrastructure to make money or get views or whatever.
Yeah, Twitch poll is an enclave, and it seems pervasive because it's definitely its own filter bubble, right? It's a
Mm-hmm.
bubble, and we don't think it. And if you spend time in that watering hole, you become blind. You're like, oh, nobody's really transphobic out here. But if you look at like, have you seen? Did you see
Yeah.
the interactions between the quartering and Keffels today?
I haven't watched any of that shit, but my thing is like because my meter is so short for that shit. Like I
Yeah.
just straight up have a zero tolerance policy for a lot of that shit, just because of how pervasive it is and how those types of people prey upon the whole "I'm sorry, not sorry. Can we just agree to disagree" thing, and everybody just kind of carrying on and letting that be what it is.
Right.
It's just
which
it
is
doesn't fly with
which is
me.
even a violation of like the innate liberalism. Like people want to say that you don't need Marxism for movements or whatever, but like chattel slavery happened under liberalism,
It did.
right? That was a fucking classic liberalist
It's still
foundation.
happening
Fucking
right now under neoliberalism and neo feudalism. Yeah.
yeah, they just expatriated it, right? It's just like fucking
Hmm.
child sharecroppers working in other countries
Well,
right now for cocoa, coffee, and cotton.
that and the 13th Amendment, the prison industrial complex is modernized
True,
slavery. Like
fucking true,
that was
big
something
true.
that was an argument I got into with Sansol's mod Samantha Savage, Samantha Banana, whatever, who's ban evading, about how she's been to federal prison and you don't have to work in there, so it's not slavery. And it's just
Federal
like,
prison is different than state prison. In state prison, you don't necessarily have to work, but they'll put you in fucking isolation. And They'll won't let you shop in the
yeah,
cantina. They like you'll be
right.
like a second class citizen in the jail if you
Right.
don't work for
Exactly.
them.
Yeah. But
So I
federal
mean,
prison,
yeah.
you have to work in federal prison.
Hmm.
And it was a stupid non argument. And I banned her for it, like, immediately. Just because I have a zero, like, you know
But
how I feel. Like,
specifically, like when you're talking about that, about the how pervasive that viewpoint is, like we, like especially from like I would say that Twitch poll has a left, it has a DemSoc friendly sort of center left aesthetic to it, and
yeah,
so you don't really
I got
see
lured in.
actual transphobia. You don't actually see, but like just hop to fucking Twitter, like fucking the
Yeah.
quartering that dipshit who is a fucking an audience that would dwarf everybody except
I
like
was
fucking
watching
Watanabe.
Kevel's stream. I was watching Kevel's stream when they were archiving all of his transphobic tweets to
Yeah, no,
get
like
him
literally
clapped.
today he's at messaging her like, "Are you going to talk to Keffel?" And he's like, "No, I don't want to talk to that dude." He's like, "Talk to Keffels or your pussy."
That's
He's
so
replying, "No,
fucking
Keffels
disgusting,
has a
dude.
dick." He's just like straight up doing overt fucking transphobia on, and
That's so
it's gigantic.
ridiculous.
And then like if you look at Joe Rogan and other stuff, so the idea that these people who these there is harm and there is a necessity for pushback for people, there is actual violence happening against people now. I don't want to call it like a
Oh
gender
yeah.
genocide or something, but like effectively
Well,
they will use that as the next thing, just like they used homophobia in the 50s and 60s to whip society in shape.
yeah, 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 yeah.
That's like they'll use anything they can to fucking flip you towards traditionalism.
Hmm.
They'll do any social wedge issue, and now people's identity and ability to live freely in a space is the thing that they're fucking weaponizing, and people are being awfully charitable to the people who don't give a fuck about those people.
Yeah, facts. Yeah, exactly. And that's why it's like, if you have to, it's just like the bar analogy. If I let these people in the bar, if inevitably they can't exist, both of these people in the bar, right? If I let one in, one of them has to leave. Why the
Yeah,
fuck would I choose the Nazis? You know what I mean? So
yeah,
it's like you're watching like we're all seeing it in real time. You're watching these people's audiences slowly shift over to the right and them get sucked into that pipeline, the anti SJW pipeline, because that's what the content registers to me as. Like with
yeah.
Sansol's tweets about like xenogenders and neopronouns and shit, like it just reads as straight up anti SJW shit to me.
I haven't seen a lot of those. I don't agree. I don't agree with Sonsol RE. I don't for the same. I don't know. I don't want to relitigate the topic, but I'm generally. I don't
Yeah,
know if
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
for or
I
against
don't.
it, but I'm for it in that I'm not against xenogenders and neopronouns.
Right.
If that makes sense. Like
I
I'm
consider
not
myself.
reactionarily opposed to it. So I don't
Yeah.
know if I fully understand it, but like I look at being against it as akin to being like anti-gay in the 70s.
Right,
it's a
yeah.
weird time to it just doesn't really seem to make
Right.
sense
The whole
to
point
do
is that it
so.
doesn't matter what your gender is, right?
Yeah. Yeah, especially if you were
What's up, bro?
You're the man now, though. Sorry.
all right. So we've been going. Is that a good place to wrap up? We've been going for almost
Oh
3
no,
hours.
sorry, yeah. I was gonna tell you fucking that's why I don't fuck with Dylan either, is because I didn't notice this, but off the rip the energy was off. Um off the rip the energy was off. He
Dylan's a gay guy, right?
Yeah, he rated me with Sansol. Sansol was in my chat, fucking, because I made it was I forget why. It was basically like there was a clip of him talking about savages from Africa or something. Whether or not it was ironically or not, like that's just some weird shit to say out of your mouth. And then in conjunction with the fucking the Amir Locke shit, where I'm like, you could talk about this. I'm literally saying the quiet part out loud on Twitter. I'm telling you, literally, you're choosing to go back and forth and do drama and shit with me when you
So
could
you're
be.
talking about him being like racialist or colorist, not. I thought like
We'll say okay. We'll say racially insensitive in that regard.
yeah.
It's just in total, like aligning with in
That's
tune
the only
with.
reason I brought up Dylan being gay. I was like, okay, well,
Right. Yeah.
yeah. I thought like, well, he's a person who's not cis, right? Or he's queer, so like I'm less likely to give a queer person pushback on gender identity issues, just because I don't really have a lot of leverage as being a cis het fucking white dude in America. I don't really have a lot of leverage to be.
Yeah.
So when I disagree, I can't like id pull them. I have no leverage.
Yeah.
I
It's
have no
just.
leverage on
It's,
that, and I don't necessarily have like I feel like skin in the game other than ideologically.
I feel
And
it.
even then, it's coming from a place of wanting to do harm reduction for people who are at intersectional oppressional risk. If that makes sense.
I was gonna say, or like reduce harm.
Yeah.
Fucking it's all white people shit to me, honestly. Because we're talking about fucking I'm literally asking you, hey, what do you know about this police shooting? And you're like, you basically don't want to say it, but you're just saying it. Is that this happens all the time? Why should I give a fuck? Right? That's basically what you're telling me with your behavior.
Yeah. Whereas they should have the other thing. They're like, yes, this happens all the time, and here's something
Right.
that brings attention to the systemic
To
failing.
the point where I'm literally telling you what you're doing. Like, hey, the whole point of this conversation that I tried to have with you all, the reason why I tweeted this first tweet in the first place was to get you to expose this information to your audience. Right?
Yeah. And sometimes I feel like with in the expediency and wanting to make every novel police oriented event a learning moment or like a heuristic fucking inflection point for like social, like, see, and here's more evidence of this and this.
Well,
I have been guilty of flatlining the narrative, and then it comes out as more complex later on. I'm like, okay, well, fuck. And
Well,
then you have to sort of like walk things back.
For me,
So I
it
don't
wasn't
know how much of
novel.
it's-
I was gonna say for
Yeah.
me it was a novel. For me, it was a challenge of I was questioning their morals because
Yeah.
at least, and this is maybe not for Sansol because I wasn't aware of him until he told me he fucked my mother for asking him if he was aware of Amir Locke, but it was a question of morality
That's
when
sort
it
of
comes
that's
to
an out of pocket response.
a little bit.
Yeah.
It was a question of morality when it comes to CTV and Stardust. Of okay, we were on, especially with CTV, we were on 2 panels where you were saying the whole reason we can't question this is because of the golden principle of self-defense. And yet, in one of the most heinous violations of self-defense, a person who is a employed and licensed concealed carry God-given member of the United States is killed by police with taxpayer money in a no-knock raid that no one seems to agree with, right?
Yeah.
You don't even know. Even when I ask you about it, your first reaction is to call me a pussy bitch or whatever because you're emotional that I'm checking you on your bullshit in public. Nah, like
I feel like that sort of, I don't know another way to say it, because a lot of them are not necessarily, probably they're not like vote blue no matter who, but there is a sort of, I don't even know
Sansol
what the
is. He's
fucking
fucking stupid.
they're just sort of centrist Democrat libs.
Yeah.
And there's a very reflexive thing where they look at you as just as radical as like a right winger is. And it's like, yeah, but I'm radical in the ways that make your viewpoints better 20 years from now.
Right.
Like I'm over here doing work so your kids will be smarter than you are about this stuff. And it's not the same.
Right.
Because in 20 years, like the Nazis aren't going to be suddenly proven right by the longitudinal arch of history, right?
Yeah.
But it's true of
History is
progressives.
decided
And
by the victors.
yeah, not only that, the progressives or the progressives of every era are correct. They're like literally correct. Like you're not going to go back to like slavery abolitionists and go, this fucking argument's kind of off. But it's like, nah, that was hitting. It was all like if you
Right.
go
It was
through
definitely
the
correct. Yeah.
yeah, the progressives of every era were correct ultimately,
Right.
and like and they were always pushbacks, and there was always systemic pushbacks to those arguments, appeals to majority, appeals to status quo, appeals to tradition, and there's the same sort of reflexive people by um, um, someone said a long time ago, and I feel like it's very true. Liberals will always default to fascism under pressure,
Yeah.
and it's
Fuck
like
yeah.
true. If you have a house in the suburbs, you are way more likely to flip to a right wing organization than a
Yeah.
left because the leftists might not ideologically support your
Because the
you
Nazis
having a
probably
house.
aren't coming for you. At least not yet, anyway. But they're
Yeah,
probably not going to come for you. But
and there's a component, and there's some, while it's not that drastic, there is a sort of reflexive, there is a reflexive pushback that they get when someone's either like they feel like they rationalize it like, well, I don't like moralists, I don't like woke scolds, I don't like, and it's, I think it's people
they
innate
think that those behaviors or that supporting those political identities or organizations have no consequences. But
yeah.
that was why I don't. That's why I don't fuck with any of that shit. But yeah, it was like Dylan rated me with Sansol because I didn't know that Sansol was one of his mods. I guess, but like the first time I did, I took offense to it. Maybe I'm reading too far into it, but it was another one of those instances where I did an entire month's worth of Black History Month content, a lot of it with Catarana. So I know you knew about it, right? We even talked
Meaning
to fucking
Dylan or Sonsol.
what's that? No, Dylan.
One or, yeah,
This is
Dylan
Dylan.
knew about it. Okay.
Right. So like I know you knew about this shit. We did hella fucking Black History Month content. Fucking we talked to Vosh, right? We fucking talked to Vosh. So I know you at least knew about that. You could have raided into me if because I was on the first Hippy Dippy recruitment last year. So I knew I
Yeah.
was on his radar at the very least. And he could have rated in, asked me about any of that content, any of my actual educational content, even fucking rated me while I was playing Mortal Kombat or something. But the time that he chose to raid me was when he saw me going back and forth with Sansol after Sansol said he fucked my mother. And when he rated me immediately, one of the first people in chat was fucking Sansol. Right? And it
Oh, you
puts
guys were like going back and forth on Twitter or
yeah,
whatever.
and it puts into
Okay.
perspective why he came and talked to me in Discord because it was like, okay, if I don't talk to this guy and seem friendly, this is going to be a hate raid, right? Because this is like 500 fucking people with this guy who's overtly antagonizing him in his chat right now. So he has to be friendly with me because that's the only way you get that juice that you're squeezing for, right? You
I
want to
don't know
see
if
me
it's
go back
that.
and forth.
You
You
may
want
have
to
been reading into that a little bit, but I understand what you're
no,
saying.
dude.
There's a control. There's
That's
a control element to it where
no, 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 no,
you're.
no. No, that's what I'm saying. That's the whole point of it. Is I raid you, I act friendly with you, so you don't question it or anything, because pretty much all the work that you've been doing with my platform has been leading up to this moment, right? And
Yeah.
then I dip out after shaking hands with you, and I get to watch you go back and forth with Sansol and chat and make more content for me and all the people like Chud Logic and so on and so forth as part of our industrial complex of let's antagonize the minorities, right?
I don't know how much of that because, like, for instance, there was what the fuck's his name chat who was the guy that um, Carpe, Carpe packs. Carpe. I
I don't know
raided
who that
him one
is.
time after he had been like he said like he didn't fuck with my community or whatever, and I was like, damn, what the fuck? I felt like he kind of came at me sideways, like, and I didn't get why he was upset.
The name
So I
sounds familiar. I probably went back and forth on Twitter or something, but I don't know exactly who that is.
he's like a I think of him as more as like a rad lib, but he would probably call himself a lefty or whatever, which is fine or whatever. But he felt like I was abrasive, meme too
Of
loud, was
course.
fucking. He didn't like that I yelled at chat.
Tone
He like
policing.
a little bit. He just didn't like my vibe or whatever. So and then he basically demodded my mod for continuing to mod with me. And so I messaged him like, hey, what's
But
up? You know what I
sure.
mean? So and he basically said I don't really fuck with you or whatever, but I was like, just to show him that there wasn't that sentiment on my side, I raided him. I was like, look, I don't know, here everyone going like, okay, so we're gonna raid Carpe, and the chat didn't know about it. I was like, everybody go, be super polite or whatever, make sure that you're very encouraging, whatever, drop some subs if you can, whatever, like go. So I had them raid him as a sort of way. In my head I thought that was an inroad building thing to show like, hey, even if you felt a type of way, I fuck with you, type of thing. And then later on, a couple months later, I saw him listing as one of the grievances that I had hate rated him one time. And I was like, bitch, please. Like I literally I went above and beyond to tell them to be kind and polite to you, and they had no idea that you and me were beefing or whatever, or that you felt a type of way about me. So I think that because he felt a type of way, the raid seemed a type of way to him. And it was really just me
Oh
like
no,
trying
in the
to
moment. Yeah, in the moment I thought it was cool. You know what I mean? Where I was
mm,
like, awesome. I'm getting to talk to Dylan. Hell yeah, we're finally going to link. We're going to do like fundraisers and shit. And he came into one of my fundraisers because we talked privately too. Because he did like a fucking, he did that video about me, the whole snake thing, when like he and I never really interacted. So it's like I couldn't have stabbed him in the back because I didn't fucking know him like that. And
oh, you were talking about the time where you
the
got
hot mic
hot
video,
mic.
yeah. And I
Yeah,
still
that shit was an
stand
unfortunate mistake.
unfortunate, but I mean,
Yeah,
it was cool for me. It's been cool for me in the aftermath. It sucked
I forgot
immediately.
about that.
Yeah, it sucked exactly. A lot of people forgot about it. Like it sucked immediately in the aftermath because like I'd be trying to do like a video on a police shooting or something, and then get snake emojis in my fucking comment section, and it's like, can we fucking, you know what I mean? And what ended up happening is because of what I was talking about in that, and just my general vibe, and it's been the same thing with Stardust videos, is that other people like me and like on my time have been kind of coming out of the woodwork like internationally, like fucking people from like Kenya and shit, like just like leftists, like the international coalition of like black leftists and shit, just like reaching out to be like, we've had this experience with these people, and just getting tapped in with really cool like people that I watch and respect in the space, like
Yeah.
getting to actually interact with them. People like Car YZ, fucking Lua, Professor Flowers, fucking excuse me,
What did you think about the Professor Flowers, the Vosh and Professor Flowers? Because here's my take on the dynamic, and maybe you can weigh in. Because Maudie was talking about you and him were talking about the black nationalism thing, and I
mhm.
think even me coming from a lefty perspective, I was more familiar with black nationalism through the Garveyite black
Yeah,
Muslim,
hmm,
that type of
that's
thing, where like
yeah,
the
that's
dudes who
not
roast people on the street,
yeah,
like the
I'm not really
like.
down with that because
Well, yeah, I would assume,
that's
yeah,
actually
like
yeah, obviously yeah, but that's one of those areas where it's like, because I've, you know, I'm an anarchist. Nationalism is kind of one of those areas where it's like I'm not down with it on principle, but
yeah,
to a certain degree I see the utility in it, just as a function of specifically with black people, the class that we occupy in America.
yeah,
Like living in the imperial core, I can see a certain utility to having that level of solidarity amongst that class. But beyond that, in terms of self defense, I don't really see any utility for it. And it's kind of like I said, I'm skittish about nationalism. I'm not a
yeah.
nationalism fan.
Yeah, so you would look so like Pan Africanism or like a sort of like W.E.B. Du Bois type of like Marxian communalism,
Yes,
Pan Africanism. You would like
that's
something like that, like a
my
Black Wall Street with a communalist
right.
aspect.
My well, sorta not so much the capitalist aspect, but that's my envisioning of black nationalism. Ideally, anyway, is more focusing on the common experience of the diaspora around the
Mm,
world and the
yeah,
solidarity that can be found through that. But beyond that, the work that has to be done is still just straight up communist work, like forming labor unions, doing all that kind of stuff.
syndicalism.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
Like
fuck, but I
anarchist
think that's
communist
so.
shit.
Yeah, that's it's so important. I think that's like a main, and I do see something very uplifting and something I want to get more into. But I'm just such a fucking never touch grass. Like I only touch grass when I'm walking my dogs, effectively.
I never
So I'm
touch grass
like,
either, honestly. I'm too busy fucking working. I'm proletariat. Like I talk to the people on my dock and we have certain ideas and I try to agitate them and improve our conditions there.
are you in a union
I'm
as a
not.
doc?
Mm-mm. And I'm
That's
getting
that.
fucked low key.
Yeah,
I
the
could
thing,
talk
like
about.
that's usually a place where people come together, like docs and other
Oh
things
yeah,
like that,
yeah,
where
yeah.
like men get hurt. That's usually
Oh
where you see
yeah.
like union work happening.
But there's propaganda at play where people don't like the word, like workers have negative connotations about unions, like they just take your
Yeah,
money and it's like fam.
yeah, they've been cucked. They've been cucked by the fucking
Right,
system.
yeah. It's like
Effectively, it's like it's a mind poison thing.
right, they're
Yeah,
like
the,
unions just take your money and I'm like fam, the owner has been taking money out of your paycheck every 2 weeks since you've been working here.
literally they have those memes about but with $700 you can get $700 annually. You can get a PS5 with that or something. It's like bitch, with the fucking extra 100K a year I would get, I could get a fucking how many PS5s with that?
Right.
It's like fucking get the
And the
fuck out of
quality
here,
of
dog.
healthcare and all that stuff, yeah. Like our healthcare is really good in there, but the wages are not. Yeah, none of us can really afford to live in that area. It kind of sucks. We all have to commute pretty far too, but
I think Bryce Belden in the Truanon, he did something effectively where he in San Francisco he was in a warehouse that did like it was a distributor for like liquor, and I think he unionized them, which I know is an arduous task, and like it makes you ripe for
yeah.
firing. Like as soon as they
Oh
figure out that
yeah,
you're organizing,
if you're
kind of
salting, yeah, they'll just fire you. Especially a place like where I work. Like if
yeah,
they found out I was even like Fade Runner, my mod, he's one of my coworker, my comrade. He works there too, and he watches Hassan just like openly on the because he works in the office, and I worry sometimes like because
yeah,
of how much Hassan talks about that shit. But yeah, you know, I my dream when I worked on the dock, like in the harbor, because I used to, at where I lived, I used to be able to take the metro, so I would actually take the subway like from my house to the inner harbor. And I worked at this spot as a barista and an ice cream scooper, and I just dreamed about like getting all like the people who work next door at the Phillips, the people who worked at the Chipotle, people at the sushi spot, the fucking Barnes and Noble, like all of us just being like, yo, we all work on this dock. This dock needs us. This is the main tourist spot in the city. We got them by the balls. You know what I mean? We should just all call out one day just to check the temperature.
yeah.
Like,
It's so
and
hard. There's something, and I know that like classically, not all in the United States, communists have been suppressed, and through the Union, they've been purged out of number one politically as a party in the United States has been like fucking sedition and whatever, and then through organizing and the being, you could not rise in unions as a Marxist or as a communist or as a socialist effectively, which has changed now. Now they're, I was listening on Chapo like last year, they elected a commun effectively like a Marxist. They elected a Marxist as the head of local chapter of the Teamsters. So like things are starting to swing back the other way after 50 years of propaganda, and it's very interesting. But I'm wondering what would logistically help, and I feel like decentralizing. I feel like coming up with a way to because well then they might just fucking ban you for suggesting the app, but like in the same way that the neighborhood app sort of decentralizes neighborhood watch shit, in that same way, what if there was an app or some other experience that would help you fucking decentralize and less get the heat off individual members in a business for organizing workplace democracy, something like
Hmm.
that. I'm wondering what you could do to make it easier now that there is a spirit, a push towards that with the populace for extra workplace democracy and co-ops and stuff like
There's
that.
delicate ways to do that. Like I said, we've been interviewing a lot of the people that have been doing that work here in Baltimore, and a lot of that is just is having a relationship with the people that you work with. The ability to say, "Hey, you want to grab a cup of coffee this weekend? I got to talk to you about something."
Yeah.
And obviously never ever fucking telling your manager or saying this kind of stuff stays off the record, all that shit. But it really, and that's the key thing about it, and that's the thing that like Black Red Guard and shit says the reason why not just the online left but like the left, I guess you could say, in the United States has failed is because a lot of the times it's not so much a community led effort. It's people that think they have a particular prescription for how the community or how people should move in a particular situation. And, Maoist vibes. You have to trust the masses because they know when it's time to go. When it's time to go, then it's time to go. And
Yeah.
they'll know when it's time to go. They don't need some gentry fucking, and a lot of times it's white people, but it doesn't necessarily have to be white people. It could be well off black people or a trans person or whatever.
You mean
Some
the movements have been too hierarchical?
yeah, I guess that I guess
Not,
you could I guess you
it's
could say
not
that.
distributed enough.
Right. Where it's like, hey, you guys should do this, and maybe they're like, nah, maybe I don't want to do that. Like prime example being these general strikes that just pop up on like Twitter or TikTok or whatever every now and then, and
Yeah.
it's like, who's organizing the strike funds? Who's organizing the self defense funds? Who's gonna start helping people, putting people up? If like, and this is why I talk because my birthday also happens to be on the anniversary of the Battle of Blair Mountain. It's like, what happens when the police start coming and evicting people at gunpoint, right? What happens
Yeah.
when that kind of shit starts happening? What's your general strike gonna look like then? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I feel like this is stuff that because a lot of, even though these people are well intentioned, they feel all of the stress of alienation of capitalism and they want to act, especially people that are in marginalized classes, especially black people, because we're people of action, right? We just don't have a lot of the times the proper political education to understand the direct causes of our material conditions, right? Whether it's things like the pervasiveness of white supremacy or just the shittiness of how capitalism has crippled the political infrastructure and by extension the commons, the infrastructure.
Yeah.
Our public transit's fucked up. All of our fucking mayors and shit are all getting caught with their hands in the cookie jar and getting fucking having to
The
resign at some
idea
point and shit.
that
Like,
the talking about like making everything infrastructure wise, the economic viability, the necessity of that for infrastructure takes it out of people who do not have the privilege of paying for everything. So
right,
take sucking more and more out of the common takes what the overarching federalized structure of the nation and makes it work against them versus the other
right,
way around, like working for them, like in the way like the freeways and the natural or the energy commodities and the utilities should be thought of as like national parks
oh
effectively,
yeah, absolutely. That
use
itself
use for
establishes.
use for the people who could actually but it's almost it's ironic. And another problem in America is that the only if you look at the history of movements, all they effectively do in the last 50, 60 years is give people more liberal rights. It just
Well,
every
because they
protest
get
movement
co-opted by, they end up getting like, for example, the breakfast program, right?
yeah,
Radical idea, Black Panther program. They
yeah,
were Marxist, neo-Marxist, Marxist-Leninist, Maoist. Like they were anti-United States government by their very nature. They were trying to establish dual power. They were trying to do like fifth column shit.
yeah,
But COINTELPRO, all that shit that happens, they get co-opted by liberalism. So now the taxpayer money goes that, which is overall a good thing. I was
yeah.
actually
I
having a
mean,
conversation with someone I think that was from Alec Gunter's community about this, which is like I guess
the New Deal was effectively the same thing.
Right. Yes.
It was a dialectic between capitalism and the populist desires of the socialist movement.
Right, but it can also be seen as appeasement to maintain the status quo, which it is.
It's a band-aid.
Right,
It's
exactly.
a band-aid on the system to make it exist.
It's a band-aid over a bullet hole.
Yeah, it's a thing that enabled this. It's a patch that allowed it to continue existing effectively.
Right.
So I think that's true. And if you look at it like, so yeah, that's true that there are literally like Martin Luther King's talked about, like, for like if you allow conservatives tell you who Martin Luther King was, it sounds like he was a colorblind meritocratic liberal.
right.
But when you look at it, there was a heavy socialist component to his liberation theology that is completely fucking whitewashed. It's completely ignored, and they take that, they make it explicitly about race and not just about class. And the class was a huge component of that. Just to sort of like, they take him talking about a racialized class, right? A racialized subjugated class, and then taking the fucking class part out of it, and then just say, and then widening the periphery of liberalism to include black people to have those same liberal individual rights without remedying the economic underlying issues. That was half of the program, half of the argument or the movement.
Right. Yeah. His main motivator was going to Mississippi and seeing the kids with no shoes. That's where my grandmother was from. She was enslaved on the same property that her mother, her mother's father, her mother's father's father, and his mother's father's father's father were enslaved on and born and lived and died on. That's just this is the kind of shit that's like, I don't know. This is the one thing that I would hope people would understand, is that in reality, like, much is said about me in terms of like the LARP or the character that's like built of me or whatever, but like, I'm 32, about to turn 33 next month, and I've been through shit that a lot of people couldn't even imagine. My fucking house is burned down. I've almost been fucking stabbed and shot by Nazis and shit. Fucking, you know what I mean? I've listened to my grandmother at my fucking aunt's, like after my aunt's funeral in Cracker Barrel, pointing to shit on the wall, fucking tools she picked cotton with and shit. Like, this is all shit that, like, a lot of people, you can't just get from a lot of the people who were involved in like Twitch poll and stuff. And it's unfortunate that minor circumstances, including shit like that, where people are too busy trying to like farm content or like get dunks or like, or whatever. Yeah. Where like a lot of the shit that and even when I try to approach gently, and people like me try to approach gently, Lord knows I tried to approach Stardust gently because she is Stardust. But you know, it's weird that the impulse is to do edgy shit and allow edgy people into the space to, if we're being charitable and assuming these people are like liberals, to like make yourself part of their pipeline and hope that eventually people from their communities eventually land and stick on you or whatever. It seems myopic to me, and this is why I was like memeing on Twitter or whatever, because it's like, how long does that take? Because black people have been here for like 400 years and they haven't seen us as human yet. So
I feel like Twitch poll in particular, when trying to reconcile what the space is and giving a little bit of time. Sorry about that.
Sorry, my bad. I gotta let someone in really quick.
Yeah. Okay.
We can. Yeah, I'm gonna do that really quick, and then we can wrap up because it's.
Wrap up. This was amazing. I'm glad.
I was gonna say, if you want to talk again, yeah.
I want to see more stuff coming in from you in the future. I'm going to routinely check in with you. This has been a great talk. I've really appreciated this. I believe my view.
I'm glad I gave you a chance.
Yeah, I appreciate you reaching out. Or I appreciate you agreeing to talk.
I apologize if there was any fucking static.
In the future,
because I know we talked some shit.
If you need help with anything, whether like web design, graphic design, anything, if you need hands on something, let me know. I'll be willing to help.
Hell yeah, I appreciate you, man. Yeah, I know we were talking shit on Twitter or whatever. And I'm sorry about that. I mean, to come at your neck.
I appreciate you.
I had to bring it up. I couldn't be a coward about it. You know what I mean? So
Oh yeah. And then I had completely forgotten about that. Yeah, we were going back and forth a little bit, but it was nothing that I was
It's
really super
yeah,
concerned about.
yeah,
So I'm
yeah,
going to
yeah.
share your links with chat. Go let that person in. I appreciate you, and I look forward to speaking with
Yeah,
you again.
I make techno music, soundcloud.com/nightmare difficulty. The Bolsheviks is my podcast. It's BALTSHEVIKS. And endlesscemetery.com or just twitch.tv/endlesscemetery is where you can find me. And I
Boom.
appreciate you, man.
Have a good night.
Oh seven
Thank you so much.
comrade.
I appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, y'all. Have a good night, y'all. I might be back. We'll see how it goes.